Evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll go ahead and call this July 22nd regular City Commission meeting to order. We want to notice the absence of Commissioner Martin. Hopefully he'll be able to get here through the rain safely and soundly in just a few minutes. And with that, I will ask for an approval of the agenda as it has been published. I do not have any amendments or changes to offer to the commission. Does the commission have any changes that they'd like to offer? Anything they'd like to pull off the consent agenda? Okay, we have one request to pull the invoices off of the consent agenda. We're going to make that item D. I'm going to make a note of that because by the time we get to D, I will have long forgotten. So put invoices as item D under the agenda. Any other commission changes or comments to the agenda as it has been published? Hearing none, does the public have any changes, comments, or questions about the agenda as been published?
Farmers Market proclamation? It's in here. Yeah, but it's on the consent agenda. It's down here, H, under National Farmers Market Week proclamation. Should that be on the consent agenda?
We usually only try to read one proclamation out loud.
Gotcha.
Just as a time saving.
Okay.
All right. Any other public comments about the agenda as it was published? Okay. Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda with the one change for the invoices? I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner Coleman. I'll also note that our city manager and attorney are in the lobby, and we welcome them to join the meeting at any point in time. And if Travis, stick your head out there and just remind them what time it is. Other than that, we will move right along. Tonight we have Pastor Jess Carter from the Newberry Church of Christ to offer our invocation. So if you would come up to the mic, we appreciate you being here. They're going to come in just as soon as we all stand up, I promise you. And then if you would, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance at the end of the invocation. Welcome, Pastor Carter.
Let us pray. Dear Almighty God, we are so thankful that we can be here this night. We are thankful for the city that we live in, for this state, for this country. We pray that you would be with us, especially this night with the leaders of this community. Help them to make decisions that would be wise, that would be good and godly. We pray that you would look down upon us as we call upon your help in trying times. And we ask in your Son, Jesus Christ's name, that you bless us and keep us. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Carter. All right, and our first item under presentations is the National Watermelon Day Proclamation. It is my pleasure to read this, and maybe we'll have someone from the Watermelon Festival here you're here? What am I thinking? Perfect. All right. Life is like eating a watermelon. You know you're going to get some seeds. Just spit them out and take another bite. That's Jeff Steiner. Whereas watermelon has been an important part of agricultural production in Newberry, and whereas the Florida watermelon industry has played a significant role in the economic growth and prosperity of our city and state, and whereas the city of Newberry has enjoyed an annual watermelon festival for 74 years, the oldest continual watermelon festival in the United States. Whereas the mission of the Newberry Watermelon Festival is to educate children in all areas of Florida agriculture while supporting our local schools. And whereas National Watermelon Day recognizes the refreshing summertime treat enjoyed by many. Now therefore I, Jordan Marlowe, Mayor of the City of Newberry, do hereby celebrate Saturday, August 3rd, 2019 as National Watermelon Day in the City of Newberry, and I encourage all citizens to personally thank our farmers, duly adopted and proclaimed this 22nd day of July 2019. And if our Watermelon Festival liaison could meet me down here, and Sierra, if you could take the picture for us.
4 times seed spitting, rain reigning champ, Bill Herson got here.
Well, there was one year both of y'all were absent, I was.
I'll call a champ, so.
Yeah, I beat Sierra at hog call one year.
They're always supposed to do this.
Just that one. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Farmer. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, and we are on to our annual Alachua County Sheriff State of the City Address. And do we have a presentation
Yes,
queued up?
Mr.
We
Mayor.
do, look at it. I like those graphics. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. I look forward to this. I was commenting to the pastor before we started, that there's some rare energy in the room, so I don't know if it's the candy that's going around or what, but I hope that it bodes us well as we go through this tonight. Oh, first let me introduce members of my command staff that are right here. Colonel David Huckstep, Major Latrell Simmons, Captain Bella Blizzard, Art Forgy, one of our PIOs, Public Information Officers, Lieutenant Jason Levy, and Lieutenant Becky Butcher. I'm sure y'all are familiar with Becky. She's doing a great job out here. And then Lieutenant Brett Rodenizer, one of our other Public Information Officers. So they are here to back me up in case y'all ask some questions that I don't know the answer to. If they don't know it, then I'll make it up. All right, what we do every year is, as part of your involvement in the contractual relationship that we have, we provide a municipal activity report. We do this also for the cities that pay into the municipal services taxing unit. And it basically shows who's serving you all as the designated representatives for our sheriff's office for the city of Newberry. The one person that is not here tonight is Sergeant William Beck. He recently graduated from the Sheriff's Commander School, so he's been out of pocket for probably just a few, maybe a week or two. I'm not sure how long that course is, but he's definitely an up-and-comer for our agency. And it's not working.
That tends to happen, but we can advance it behind, and maybe
Oh,
Travis
toward
can
the
come
back?
up and help reboot that little clicker. Sometimes it turns off on us. He's right behind you.
Well, while we're getting that fixed, here we go.
There we go.
What we do for each of the cities is show the comparison from previous years and also with the county as a whole. Thank you, Lieutenant. With this, we went back to 2016, and it shows you in the green bar the calls for service back in 2016, and then the comparison, as you can see it, for 2017, 2018. The smaller bar, the gold, is the actual reports that are written. A call for service may be someone flagging them down, wanting to know directions or general information or any sort of face-to-face contact where it does not have to be documented in a formal report. It's gone down, as you can see, not too dramatically, but still it's gone down. And then the case reports are not too far off from 810 in 2017 to 760. And it varies. It just depends on what activity is going on during the course of a year. This is another way to look at the top crimes from your area. Domestic violence incidents is the #1 crime to which we respond for the city of Newberry. That is no different from the county as a whole or from any of the other cities. Domestic violence is the #1 call that we respond to. It's also one of the most dangerous for the victim and also for our deputies. And then you see the pie chart breakdown. Your second most prevalent crime is burglary, and that includes all the burglaries. We'll break it down a little bit further as we go through this. In fact, and that's a slide right there. You've got your business burglaries, residential burglaries, and then conveyance, and then we've got 2 that are unclassified for whatever reason. But the important point is to look at the top of the slide. It shows, again, the number of case reports for Newberry, 760, and then the comparison with the county overall. Always like to give you that comparison. This is from the Patrol Operations Division. Captain Blizzard and Major Latrell Simmons are the ones that oversee this area of our agency. On the top left, again, a look at the cost for service with a breaking down with the percentage as it compares to the countywide. And then on the right, it shows the population at the point in time that this report was done and the comparison of the square miles. Some people are surprised to learn that Alachua County is over 900 square miles. We also have about 62 square miles of waterways. And then it shows the breakdown for Newberry. Y'all are right at 55 square miles. Traffic citations. This is people's favorite contact or interaction with us. But the 5 top traffic citations are broken down. And curiously enough, the first two, the first and second most prevalent, have to do with paperwork, if you would, administrative requirements, having a valid driver's license and having the insurance. Speeding is your third most prevalent. And then you can see on the left-hand side the traffic citation total for the year 2018. What we're going to do too is break it down a little bit further to show you with a thermal map of where that concentration is. The darker the red means the higher the number. As you move into the dark green, that's where you have the lowest number of traffic citations. It does not show exactly where the violation occurred. It shows where the traffic stop happened. But clearly it shows that the center city part of Newberry is where most of the activity happens. That's not a surprise. In any city, whenever you have your highest concentration of people, you have the highest concentration of vehicles, and therefore you have higher concentration of citation. But this is something that we tried new for this year, and I think it gives you a good idea of the activity that is happening. Warrants Bureau is another area within our agency that we have a responsibility. And they typically are in what we call soft uniforms, not the dark green uniform that you usually see me in. They do some undercover, but they also are responsible for serving all the warrants throughout the county. And it shows the breakdown for the various classifications of warrants and the percentages as compared to the rest of the city. But they will give you a presence also, and that's something that's hard to quantify because, again, you may not see them or know that that's them. They're in plain cars, unmarked cars, so it's hard to quantify exactly how much time that they are here. And as noted there, the warrant information is based on the mailing address of the person. And then this is another area where you may not notice that they're here in the city of Newberry. This is our drug task force. They deal with medium-level and high-level types of drug violations. It's a partnership between us and the Gainesville Police Department and the University Police Department. We all share staff. They all work out of one location, and they do investigations that typically take a long time. They develop undercover sources, and then they develop cases, and it may take a year or 2 years before you actually see the fruits of their labor. But as you can see, there are 12 active cases at the point in time that this report was done, with 1 arrest, and then the breakdown of the drugs that are representative here in the city of Newberry.
Sheriff, could I interrupt you 1 second
Sure.
for a question? What is, and I just can't quite put my memory on it, what is Alachua County's stance these days when it comes to marijuana? How are we treating marijuana these days?
Well, that's a 2-part answer. Alachua County commissioners, there are a couple that are fervent believers, and there should be no arrest for especially misdemeanor level marijuana. What is the more current statewide situation, and your attorney will know this, from the standpoint of Governor DeSantis legalized hemp and as a product for the state of Florida. If you look at hemp, if you smell hemp, you can't tell the difference between what hemp is and what marijuana or cannabis is. Cannabis is still illegal in the state of Florida. What has complicated the drug enforcement area and the investigation area, and it's not only here in Alachua County, even though we do have at least 1 or 2 commissioners who make it quite well known that they don't care for the enforcement. But statewide now, law enforcement is in a dilemma in that our drug test kits that we use out in the field cannot distinguish between hemp and marijuana or cannabis. And so for right now, we're going to be cutting back or dialing back our enforcement until we get the test kits. We had to order some that come from Switzerland, and they're in great demand right now by all law enforcement in the state of Florida to be able to differentiate between if someone's got a bag of hemp versus a bag of marijuana. They smell exactly the same. What's going to come in handy for us, and this is based upon our general counsel's interpretation, we do have canines that are trained in 5 drug substances, and they can detect any of those substances. And so if we were to make a traffic stop or walk up on someone and the dog alerts, that is probable cause for us to continue further with the search, primarily in a vehicle. So you're going to see less and less of the marijuana enforcement because law enforcement was not part of the discussion as it went through the legislature. So that the intent, I think, was a good one from the standpoint of Florida's economy, because hemp is a very valuable commodity for Florida to get invested in and to produce. And part of it where it will help the most is up in the Panhandle. Most of the farmers there were pine trees, raising pine trees. Now all those pine trees pretty much got knocked down during Hurricane Michael, and it takes a long time to have a pine tree grow enough for it to be profitable. They're going to replace most of them are going to replace their crops. Thank you. Ooh, that was evading me. Their crops, instead of pine trees, they're going to be planting hemp. So I'm giving you a long answer to a fairly simple question, but it's really got us complicated. We've had to come out with a legal opinion and guide our patrol folks especially that it's not a popular decision by a lot of people out in the field, but if they do a stop and they smell marijuana, that unless they have a dog hit on that smell, we're going to have to let them go unless there are other charges. Now, we're not putting that out on a billboard or putting it out on a public service announcement, but since you asked the question, I wanted to be honest and respond to you. Thank you. Any other questions about that? So our drug task force, again, there's a lot of drugs out there, and so they'll, without the dog reinforcing becoming the probable cause, or other attendant types of things like paraphernalia, and having hidden in a compartment, we're going to back off of marijuana and concentrate on these other drugs. This is another area. Each of these bureaus that I'm showing you are different areas within the Sheriff's Office for which you receive a benefit. Our Juvenile Relations Bureau, we do teen court. These are for low-level, primarily misdemeanor, first-time offenses by a young adult, teenager, and they're given the chance to go before teen court, and that is a court of their peers. They go into an actual courtroom at the criminal courthouse. There will be a volunteer to serve as judges. If any of y'all would like to sit in the judge's chair and serve as a judge for these teens that are going through the process for the first time, they are judged by a jury of their peers. Some of their peers who are now being jurors have been in their place where they've committed a crime, and they have been referred to teen court to divert them away from a sentence or incarceration in juvenile detention. One of the key aspects of it is they have to accept responsibility for what they did. They have to have parental involvement. They have to apologize to that parent or guardian in open court. So it formalizes a process that some of us take for granted. That if we do something wrong, we're going to admit it, we're going to apologize for it and take responsibility. But a lot of children and young adults don't do that anymore. So this is a course of learning, and it's had a very low recidivism rate. So it has proven to be a very effective program. The RADS Kids is a program that is safety, how to defend yourself from a stranger. and it's based upon age appropriate. So, you know, with younger kids, it's not as scary, but it teaches them how to call 911. It teaches them to know their name, last name, first name, last name, their home address, the basic types of information. I'm not going to go through all these because we're short on time, but these are all special programs that we do offer. The most recent one was the Washington, D.C. Safety Patrol trip. Did any of y'all have children, grandchildren? You did? Okay, did they enjoy it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It is incredibly popular. We're one of the few agencies in Florida that still do this. Most of them discontinued it. Getting into your school resource deputy, you've got Eric Nystrom at Newberry Elementary School. I'm not going to read each of the bullet points, but you can see that they each get involved in their school and also in extracurricular activities. They have allegiance to their school, and they do a great deal of mentoring and as well as the protection aspect. Oakville Middle School, you've got Deputy Montana Sayers. You can see all the things that she's involved in, and each of these deputies really enjoy and take ownership of their school. Newberry High School, Josh Pettit, a lot of activity, especially at Newberry High School. So the program is definitely needed. Now it's mandated by law. We were doing it in the high schools and middle schools prior to it becoming law, and we also had them in deputies in elementary schools before it became mandatory. Racial and ethnic disparity is just another program. Just real quickly to point out the numbers down at the bottom where there is intervention with youth. It's to make sure that all of our deputies recognize what implicit bias is and to be able to treat all children and youth in an equitable manner. It's also a way to divert them from an arrest and use other alternatives such as school discipline. It's done very much in partnership with the school district. The number 15 and the 14 for the years prior, none of those happen in any of the Newberry schools. This is some of the other programs that they've, just to drill it down a little bit, youth dialogue, books and burgers, donuts with the deputy, and then the Operation Community Outreach, which is our ice cream cone truck. We're one of the few sheriff's offices in the state that have that. And the students in the various schools were challenged to come up with the artwork for that van. And so you'll see two different pieces of art as the emblem that's on that van. This is a van that was donated by SunTrust Credit Union as part of our community partnership, but it is well received whenever we go into a neighborhood. I'm not going to go through each of these because my voice is about to fail, but these are some of the highlighted cases going back to 2018. I do want to highlight Lila Leach. That is a case from 2010. Sure, most of you, if not all of you, remember that case. We have not given up on that. We now have an $8,000 reward, thank you, by this partnership with Crime Stoppers, but we also have spent close to $30,000 in DNA testing. DNA is just, it's just evolving at such a rapid pace, and it takes a lot to keep up with it, and it is expensive. But we are very hopeful. We've had 19 individuals eliminated as suspects whose names have come up through the course of that investigation, and I really hope one day that we'll be able to solve that case. Sexual offenders, I believe you got 15 in the city of Newberry. We've got the unique situation of one female. You don't often see that. One female out of the 15. And what we do with this is keep it updated with their vehicles, where they're living. They have to register with us and then keep us posted whenever they change their address. And we have a full-time deputy make sure that they are living where they say they're living, they're working where they say they're working, and we'll do sporadic, spontaneous, unannounced visits with them. These are some of the community events that we did this past year. High School Criminal Justice Expo, the Watermelon Festival, Homecoming Parade, Christmas Parade, Coffee with the Cop, and Movie in the Park, which I understand is being very well received by your residents here. And some of y'all have heard us speak, either me or my command staff, of what a full-service agency is. And some agencies are not full-service. We're full-service because we cover 365 days a year. We have special teams, crime scene processing. Some of the programs down at the bottom don't necessarily play into being a full service. It's just an added bonus. But some of the things that you have to have be full service is a crime scene investigation, detectives, school resource officers now, or school resource deputies, and we bring a lot to the table. Closing comments, just we really value our relationship with the city of Newberry. It's been long-term. We hope to continue it. You all are growing very quickly and have just a remarkable expectation for the future. And so we love to be a part of it and look forward to being able to serve you as we go into 2019.
Thank you, ma'am. And we like that sticker on that slide. That's good. Yes. Does the commission have any questions for the sheriff? About the report?
Y'all are too easy tonight.
I tell you. Just want to thank you for that Rad Kids program. Our opioid task force here in Newberry has met with them. We're looking forward to partnering with the school board and Rad Kids to try to integrate that program and make it worth all it can be worth. So I do appreciate that.
Well, Mayor, I'm glad you brought that up. What we do have, the Micanopy Community School is the first school in the state of Florida to have every single one of their students go through the RAD program. It's the first one in the state of Florida. If you all want to consider that as a possibility for Newberry, like I said before, it's age appropriate, doesn't scare the child, but it teaches them the valuable basics that they need to know, as well as to yell and to not trust somebody that's a stranger to them. So we're happy to help in any way that we can.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from the dais? Does the
Thank
public
you.
have any questions on the presentation? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Madam Sheriff.
Great, thank
Have a
you.
safe trip home.
Thank you.
While they are gathering up, since that's the bulk of our audience, give them a second to get out. It doesn't take very long, so if you would indulge me, I'd like to read this proclamation over quickly one more time and ask Miss Linda to join me up at the podium to accept it. And once again, whereas watermelon has been an important part of agricultural production in Newberry, and whereas the watermelon industry, the Florida watermelon industry, has played a significant role in the economic growth and prosperity of our city and state, and whereas the city of Newberry has enjoyed an annual watermelon festival for 74 years, the oldest continual watermelon festival in the United States, and whereas the mission of the Newberry Watermelon Festival is to educate children in all areas of Florida agriculture while supporting our local schools, and whereas National Watermelon Day recognizes the refreshing summertime treat enjoyed by many. Now, therefore, I, Jordan Marlowe, Mayor of the City of Newberry, do hereby celebrate Saturday, August 3rd, 2019 as National Watermelon Day in the City of Newberry, and I encourage all citizens to personally thank our farmers. Duly adopted and proclaimed twice this 22nd day of July 2019. And Miss Linda, would you please meet me up? And Miss here.
Let us thank Manager New.
He's up right here in front here, so we can see. Do you want jacket on or jacket off for the photo? I think
guess-
jacket on. Yeah. You want to take it off just for a second? Okay. There you go. Slide it right down. Just look at the doors. We get all three of them.
Goodness, this is like paparazzi time or something, isn't it?
All right. Thanks for making
Thank
it.
you very much.
Thank you so much. All right. Yeah, now, are you fleeing this? Are you going to stay? You're going to stay and put it back on. All right. Okay, we will move right along to our third presentation tonight, which is the Newberry Main Street Organization update on art competition for the Kwoski Centennial Celebration. I think I got it right this time.
We are not calling it that. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you for your time this evening. I am Marlon Day. I'm the chair of the 125th Century City of Newberry Anniversary Art Contest Committee. My other committee members include Peggy Loy, who's here tonight, and Linda Lehrman. We've been working on the rules and the call to artists, the entry application, and we have those ready for you to review. As the mayor mentioned when he announced this, we're on a little bit of a
Time crunch.
hurried timeline. We plan to do the call to artists as early as next week, and then the artists will submit their artwork on November the 17th. It'll be hung in the gallery hopefully in time for the Fall Festival. The official reception for the contest will be December the 6th, and at that night they'll also announce the winner. And the artwork will be on exhibit at the gallery until February the 1st. That's our update.
That
you think
sounds-
everybody got copies of it?
That sounds wonderful. You guys have done a great job getting this thing put together in an expeditious manner. Does the commission have any questions or comments? Marlon, Commissioner Norfleet is your liaison for Main Street. Is he one of the judges for the contest?
We have not determined.
Haven't determined the
the
judges yet?
judges. No,
Okay.
that is TBD,
DBD.
to be determined.
To be determined. Any other questions? Think about it. See how your art skills. Any other questions for Main Street for the art contest? So how long? Drop off. They'll drop off the art on November 14th, and then they pick it up on February the 2nd.
Yes, it'll hang in the art gallery from the 23rd, which is the Fall Festival, through February 2nd. At February 2nd, we have another art show coming in with the
But the
elementary schools show in February.
the decision will be announced December the
December the
6th.
6th,
So December
yes.
the 6th, we'll know the image that will proceed. So we'll need to get that image to staff at that point, or is Main Street handling the digitizing of
At that point, we
TBD, right?
we will
So
probably turn it
how-
over
we need to work
uh,
that out soon, because that, we want to be able to have that ready to go on shirts, hats, plates, whatever that committee. So Dr. Hersom will get on that part. We have a committee member of the, I can't see her, but I know she hasn't left yet. She's got Mike's jacket on, so she can't leave. Right? So you guys have that timeline in your mind as well. Okay, any other questions for Marlon about the art contest? Once again, great job jumping right on this. I appreciate you guys so much being flexible and getting it done for us. I look forward to seeing that art.
I am too. I think it'll be
Yeah.
pretty
Interesting.
nice.
Yeah. Oh, we have a lot of artists join the contest, so we have lots to pick from.
Yes. Yeah, with the $500 grand prize, I think we'll have a good number of entries.
Yeah, good deal. Okay. There are no more, any public have any questions for the art contest update that's going on? Want to know what that contest is? I don't know if we did a very good, Marlon did a pretty good summary there at the beginning, but we are going into our 125-year anniversary of the city of Newberry, and Main Street has agreed to run an art contest for us so that we have an image that we can take onto our memorabilia. So, Kwoski Centennial. Good job, Commissioner Coleman. Well done. All right. If there are no more questions, thank you for that update. We now have a break in our agenda for public comments. These are 2-minute comments of the non-controversial nature. What? That comes later in the agenda.
I'm Marlon Day with the Alachua County Library District at this point. I wanted to make sure that y'all know that we have 3 great programs going on this following week. This Wednesday, day after tomorrow, we have the Wild Wonders Animal Show. It's going to be at 4 p.m. On Friday, we have a summer dance party at 3 p.m. And also the Blood Mobile will be at the library from 10 to 1. If anybody is able to donate blood, they have a critical shortage right now. And finally, next Monday, we have the Flora Dingers art presentation and program will be at 2:30, and the program starts at 3, and they're doing some art at 2:30. As always, you can check our calendar for more programs, and I ask that you share these items with your constituents.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions about this?
What was the first announcement?
The first one was the Wild Wonders Animal Show, which is day after tomorrow at 4 p.m.
Any other questions about? As always, Marlon's doing a great job over there with the library. Any other public comments, announcements? Hearing none, we will move on to consent agenda. Can I have a motion to entertain the amended consent agenda? Have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth. Second from Commissioner Norfleet. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passes unanimously. And that takes us to public hearings and ordinances. That's on D under agenda. Mr. Attorney, would you mind reading Resolution 2019-25 into the record for us, please, sir?
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to do so. This is resolution number 2019-25, a resolution determining the proposed millage rate, the current year rollback rate, and the date, time, and place for the first and second public budget hearings as required by law. Authorizing the city manager to change the budget hearing dates if necessary, directing the Director of Finance and Administration to file said resolution with the property appraiser pursuant to the requirements of Florida statutes and the rules and regulations of the Department of Revenue of the state of Florida, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass resolution number 2019-25 as read by title only.
And before I ask for that motion, I'm going to ask Dallas to take us through the preliminary millage rate. And I just want to remind everybody that the preliminary millage rate is not the millage rate that we will actually end up with, or potentially would not be the actual millage rate. Whatever we set tonight is the highest that it can go. It can't go past that, but we can take it down if needed, okay, which is at this point in time in our budget season, staff's and the commission's recommendation. So Dallas, would you take us through anything that you have to add to that before I ask for that motion?
Mr. Mayor, you hit all the high points. Like you said, this is the cap. We do have to adopt the preliminary millage rate 35 days after the property appraiser gives us our taxable property values, or by August 1st. Staff has built a budget based on budget workshops at a millage rate of 5.99999, which is our current millage rate. Our rollback rate is 6.0006 mils, and we propose that you set your preliminary millage rate today at 6.3623, which is the simple majority rate. That is the rate that would get advertised on your trim notices that will go out in August. And as the mayor said, in September, you'll have every option to adopt a rate lower than this. If you intended to adopt a rate higher, you should either set it now, or we'd have to renotice all taxpayers in the county, in the city.
Okay, and so the proposed millage rate is 6.3, say it again, Dave?
6.3623, which is the simple majority. 3 commissioners can adopt that in the budget
All right.
hearings.
And it reminds me of, while we're doing this, the sheriff brought up Hurricane Michael, which wiped out the Panhandle, and there was a commission up there that did not set their preliminary rate to that height, and then Hurricane Michael hit, and they spent $2 million in 2 weeks on just storm debris trying to clear up from that. So it's always good to give yourself a little bit of slack before you know where you're headed in the end. Are there any questions for Dallas on the preliminary millage rate? Does the public have any questions on the proposed preliminary millage rate? Okay. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for resolution 2019-25.
Move.
I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth. Second. A second from Commissioner Hersom. Any questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? Does the public have any questions on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously, and we're on to resolution 2019-23. Mr. Attorney, would you please read that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is a resolution of the City of Newberry, Florida, relating to the provision of fire rescue services, facilities, and programs in the City of Newberry, Florida, establishing the estimated assessment rate for the fire rescue assessments for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2019, directing the preparation of an assessment roll, providing for hardship assistance, authorizing a public hearing, and directing the provision of notice thereof, and providing an effective date. appropriate motion is pass resolution 2019-23 as read by title only.
All right, before I ask for that motion, Dallas, you want to tell us anything about
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
this?
And before I get into fire assessment, I did forget to mention the millage rate that our first public hearing on millage rate will be September 9th, 2019 at 7 p.m. in City Hall.
Thank you for catching that.
On the fire assessment, this is the same thing that you just did with the millage rate. You're setting your cap, the highest that you'll go this year, and the amount that'll be advertised on your trim notices. Staff has prepared a budget based on our current rates of $175 per residential unit, 15 cents per square foot for commercial, 3 cents per square foot for industrial warehouse, and 20 cents per square foot for institutional properties. The highest rate that the commission can go this year without renoticing is $225 per unit. At the current rates, we anticipate bringing in $512,000, and like I said, that's the amount that the fiscal year 20 budget is based off of. The only thing additional that has changed in this assessment resolution this year is we've changed the way that the hardship assistance program works. In the past, we had some old language that required us to bring hardship exemptions directly to the commission, which is a little awkward for some of the people who were applying for hardship exemption. So in this resolution, we've adopted language that allows that to be a staff review based on criteria set by the state. If they meet the low to moderate income requirements set by the state and some other criteria set by the state, we can go ahead and exempt them. It's the same criteria we use when bringing people to you guys in the last couple of years. We just don't have to take that extra commission step. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Dallas, is the fire assessment rate, this is preliminary in the same way that the millage is preliminary?
Yes, sir.
So whatever we say tonight, we can't go above that.
Without renoticing, yes, sir.
We did have a commissioner at the last budget workshop propose shifting the cost some. I didn't hear another commissioner adamantly support that concept, but since that commissioner is missing tonight, it feels wrong to not at least allow the potential for that conversation to go on. But in my mind, I think it was a proposed $14
Mr. Mayor,
increase that would then come off of the millage rate.
Mr. Mayor, based off of those commissioners' comments at the budget hearing, or budget workshop, our consultants ran some new numbers. To increase $60,000 in fire assessment revenue, we would need to increase our residential rate by $24, and then a few cents on the other commercial rates. That would result in a 0.1360 mill reduction in your millage rate, which would equal about $12.24 for your residential units, which means you would be raising your fire assessment by $24, reducing it by 22.5 to generate that $60,000.
Okay, the question would be, is the commission, because you would have to set the fire assessment at $199
Correct.
in order to allow that commissioner to have the opportunity to have that conversation with you guys. If we set it at $175, we cut that potential for a conversation completely off. You could set it at $199 tonight, even if in your mind you already know you're not going to vote for that, you're going to vote for the $175. It would be more of a professional courtesy, I guess, at this point. But if all four of you know that's not something you're interested in, maybe it's not a professional courtesy that's worth extending. I'm not even particularly sure that Commissioner Martin is 100% behind that. It was more of a let's talk about it than it was a this is where I want to go. Commissioner Coleman. Push hard.
You did good, man. So I missed it. So 199.
There were 2 or 3 items on our capital outlay that were specific to the fire department. Commissioner Martin posited that it might be fairer to increase the fire assessment fee to pay for those specific capital outlay items and then reduce whatever that is on the millage rate. We didn't, it had been already, I was at the end of the night, it had been sort of a long workshop already, so we didn't go very far into it. It was kind of a, let me put it on everybody's radar as an idea. I would gauge his excitement for the idea at maybe 50-50. It truly was sort of, let's talk about it, than I think this is the right way to do it. But if we vote for 175, we will not talk about it because that's as high as we can go. If you vote for the 199, you would give him the opportunity to either continue the conversation, or he may come back and say, nah, I've thought about it, that's not a good, I don't want to do that anyway. It's up to you. I'm just putting it out there because once that vote is taken, we can't go back this year.
Well, it's preliminary, so.
It's preliminary, you set it whatever you want tonight and take it back to the 175, just like the millage rate. But you would give him the opportunity to at least continue the
But
conversation.
you're saying the millage rate was point,
Mr. Mayor, if you increased your fire assessment rates by $24 residential unit, you would, to gain that 60,000, to reduce that 60,000 off the millage, you could reduce the millage rate by 0.1360 mils, which would essentially, you'd be raising residential assessments and taxes by $24 and then reducing them by 12.
Important thing to understand about millage rate, everyone pays millage rate, but each household pays the assessment. So if you have one large entity in town that pays a disproportionately large share of your millage rate, then if you add it onto the fire assessment and take it off of the millage, you do that one entity a pretty big favor, but everyone else in town makes up for the difference. Now, the principled side of the argument would be that when I call 911, I get the same level of service no matter where I am. So it's fair that everyone pays some rate. But that's why you're not seeing an apples to apples there, because if we pay for it through millage, one entity pays a lot more in millage than everyone else. So the question tonight is not necessarily, from me, it's not necessarily to have this conversation about whether that idea is right. It's just to extend the professional courtesy to Commissioner Martin, who is not here to advocate yay or nay for it himself, to whether or not we want to give him the chance to do that at a later date.
well, I moved to approve, resolution 219-23 to, cap rate of 199. And we can go from there.
Okay. Well, if it's going to change that, I need a second or it's going to die.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Rick Coleman to approve Resolution 2019-23 at 199 with a second from Commissioner Hersom. City Manager, would you like to?
Mr. Mayor, when Dallas got feedback from GSG, there was corresponding increases in the square footage range for non-residential. I presume that you meant 199 for residential plus the corresponding increase for non-residential. Dallas knows those figures, and I just want to see if you would like to amend your
Let's hear it.
motion to include that.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. The rates would be $199 per residential dwelling unit, 17 cents per square foot for commercial units, 3 cents per square foot for industrial warehouse units, 23 cents per square foot for institutional units.
Do you amend your motion to?
I'll amend it to that, yes.
Do you amend your second?
Yes.
Dr. Hersom? Okay, we have an amended motion, an amended second. Any questions or comments from the dais on the preliminary motion on the floor? Commissioner Farnsworth?
Of course, I'm not going to be voting for this. I think any increase that you do like that, you're taking the burden away from the people that can't afford it and putting it on the people that really can't afford it. I think that we should continue to keep the fire assessment fee at the current rate.
Mr. Mayor, could we have Dallas walk us through the procedural process that happens with your vote tonight if you're at 175 or you're at the 199, just so the commissioners all are realizing what happens on August 26th? I think it's important for them to understand that. I don't want to influence the decision anyway, but I want to make sure that procedurally they understand it.
And I want to make sure everybody knows that whatever we say tonight is not the end result.
That's
What we say tonight allows conversations to continue on August 26th. That night, it will be the final vote. But Dallas, is there anything more than that to reiterate in terms of the procedure? That this is preliminary?
Mr. Mayor, the only thing I would add is, you know, this rate that you set tonight is the rate that will get sent to all of your taxpayers. So the trim notices that go out will show that the commission has tentatively adopted a tax increase.
That's the point I wanted to make sure that the commissioners understood. I've experienced the past
The
where we've
backlash.
got 200 people, not 200, we've got a number of people that didn't understand that that's not your final numbers. They come here and they're very concerned about this. So I just want to make sure that that part is also understood.
Any Commissioner Herson?
How clear is the word tentative in the trim notice?
It is a government document designed by the state of Florida.
It's not very clear.
And I would, even when you do say it, I mean, people, your eye goes to increase more than tentative, you know, so we just have to we all have to understand it so that we can speak with one voice when people ask and say, look, we had a commissioner out, he had this idea, I'm not even sure he's backing that idea, but we want, as a professional courtesy, we wanted to allow the conversation to happen. I don't particularly have any expectation that it's going to play out that way. But I know if I was in his position, I would at least appreciate my colleagues giving me the opportunity to say, you know, no, I don't think that's a good idea, or I think that is a good idea, and this is my argument, and then you guys can hash it out. Okay, any further questions or comments from the dais?
Yeah, I think, I agree with you. I think that we should leave it there. We all got big shoulders here. We can explain when we get it, but need to at least have him back here on the 26th, and let's see where it goes from there.
Any other questions, comments from the dais? Public questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Commissioner Norfleet?
On the August meeting, will you be able to elaborate more on who's paying what rate if we decide to switch around with the millage rate versus the fire assessment fee? A little bit more information on, you know, the area of commercial space versus institutional rates and stuff in the city.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, I should be able to have that information available.
Any public comments or questions on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no.
No.
Okay, we have motion dies on the floor. All right, does anyone want to offer another motion?
Move to approve Resolution 219-23 with a cap rate of 175 and whatever.
All right,
Whatever those are.
and all the rates would be the same as what was in the backup material at that point. Do I have a second? I have a second from Commissioner Norfleet. So a motion from Commissioner Coleman, second from Commissioner Norfleet. Any questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Any, Commissioner Herson?
So what we are doing is agreeing not to discuss again.
That's exactly right.
That's right.
So I just wanted to make sure that's clear that the commission is voting that we don't want to talk about this anymore.
That is where we're headed at this point. We'll apologize to Commissioner Martin. It's what he gets from being on vacation. So, any public comments or questions for the motion on the floor? Okay, let's do a roll call. Commissioner Coleman?
Aye.
Commissioner Herson?
No.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Norfleet? Motion passes 3-1. And we are on to legislative public hearing and second reading of ordinance 2019-17. Mr. Attorney, will you read that into the record for us, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance number 2019-17, an ordinance pertaining to utilities within the city of Newberry, amending Chapter 98 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Newberry, adopting electric service policy manual, and authorizing city staff to adopt further policies and procedures for the utilities, repealing all ordinances in conflict and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2019-17 as read by title only.
All right, before I entertain a motion, Mr. Jones, will you take us through your presentation? Please make sure we get it right. We won't have to go back and amend any motions.
I hope so. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. We first brought this item before you at the last meeting in June. It basically amends the utilities code of ordinances, specifically the electric section, and allows for the incorporation of electric service policy, which is the nuts and bolts operational level document for the electric department, terms of service, characteristics of service. It also gives us the ability, as materials and standards in the industry and practices change, that we can bring those forward and interact with the developers, contractors, and the residents on how the city of Newberry provides electric service to its customers.
This is the second reading. I believe it passed unanimously the first time. Does anybody come up with any more questions or comments about this ordinance? Okay, hearing none, does the public have any questions or comments about this ordinance? All right, if not, I'll entertain a motion in favor of second reading of ordinance 2019-17 at this time.
Motion to approve ordinance 2019-15.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Hersom. Second from Commissioner Coleman. Any questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Does the public have any questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously, and we are on to the second reading of ordinance 2019-15. Mr. Attorney.
An ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, amending the text of the land development regulations to add section 4.22 entitled Commercial Kennels, Veterinary Clinics, and Animal Shelters located on arterial highways within agricultural, and to amend section 4.4.5.10 Agricultural Special Exceptions, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2019-15 as read by title only for second and final reading.
All right, Brian, you want to take us through this before we ask for a motion on this second reading?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is second reading. Was passed unanimously on first reading back on, I believe it was June 24th. So staff's recommendation is to enact ordinance 2019-15 on second reading. Just a brief history, we originally presented this to the Commission back on May 28th as a concept and sought direction from the Commission, which was given. We came back and presented a draft ordinance to the Planning and Zoning Board at the June 3rd meeting. The Planning and Zoning Board voted unanimously to recommend approval of the ordinance to the City Commission with an amendment that was placed into the draft ordinance and presented on first reading. And then when presented on June 24th, the Commission voted unanimously to approve on first reading. This is the ordinance that basically changes the allowable setbacks for commercial kennels, small animal boarding facilities, and veterinary clinics that do boarding from 300 feet in agricultural to 50 feet if they are fully enclosed, meaning essentially not necessarily soundproof, but close to soundproof. If they are an open air facility, that doesn't change. They still have to maintain the 300-foot buffer in agriculture, and the code for commercial intensive, which allows them by right. However, they have to be in soundproof buildings. That did not change. And then adding section 4.2.40, which is the criteria by which they can be approved in agricultural zoning by special exception. Again, minimum lot size, 4 acres, structure housing of dogs and animals have to be completely enclosed and designed to suppress noise and sounds from the animals. The animals in outdoor areas have to be at least 50 feet away from the property line, 200 feet if it's a residential zoning district adjacent. There's a 25-foot landscape buffer requirement, and the use of outdoor areas to walk the animals or exercise the animals is limited to 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And you can't board for more than 30 consecutive days. The caveat that the Planning and Zoning Board, if you remember, wanted added was that if the veterinary clinic that's the applicant does not provide overnight boarding services in terms of long-term boarding for convenience, not for medical reasons, just it's a drop-off service. then they would not be subject to the 4-acre minimum. So if you're doing boarding strictly for medical purposes after a surgery or something like that, or observation, that's fine. It's only if they do drop-off boarding that they would be required to meet the 4-acre minimum, as the others are. Mr. Mayor, is conclusion.
Anybody have any further thoughts, questions, comments on this ordinance? I know it's been kind of percolating around the community a little bit. Commissioner Herson?
Just a clarification maybe, is the overnight boarding shall be limited to no more than 30 consecutive days. Is that for any one animal? Or is that
Brian?
30 consecutive days of activity?
Can you click back one time so everybody can see that language?
It would be per animal, so.
I think that was the intent. Is that what that says, though?
It was certainly the intent, Mr. Mayor. Never thought of it otherwise, so we could, if it needs to be tweaked to clean it up, I guess we could do that, but that was the assumption, was 30 days per animal consecutive.
Should it say overnight boarding shall be limited to no more than 30 consecutive days per animal? Just for clarity's sake, or is that nitpicky?
No, I think anything that's more clear in the interpretation helps us, the staff, so I agree.
It doesn't change the intent, so.
Correct.
Certainly add that in.
Any further questions from the dais? Any questions from the public? Okay, I entertain a motion to approve the second reading of 2019-15.
With the amendment.
With the
if you so
amendments
choose.
of NF, if you so choose.
Move to approve ordinance.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman. Second from Commissioner Norfleet. Any questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? Does the public have any questions for the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And we are going to enter into a series of quasi-judicial hearings. We have 4, 5 in a row. 6, 7. They just keep on going. I'm going to read our quasi-judicial proceeding policy and procedures. As long as no one new enters the room, then I will not continue to reread our procedures for every quasi-judicial item. If somebody new does enter the room, and Commission, please help me, because sometimes I'm looking down when somebody sneaks in. Let me know if somebody has. If nobody does, then we'll just move from one item to the next, and we will remain in quasi-judicial or within our quasi-judicial proceedings. So at this time, I'm going to read into the record in a second the ordinance, resolution by title number, or the applicant's name, file number, and the subject matter to be decided if there is no ordinance or resolution. Then I'll explain the rules concerning testimony, primarily that the substantial and competent evidence must be met when the board makes a decision, and shall state the following, and I quote, all public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts. Closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. I'm going to go through the procedure and the order of the presentations. We're going to let the applicant, staff, and all participants requesting to speak may be collectively sworn in at the beginning of the hearing by the city attorney or designee. Ms. Attorney, am I right that can we do that for all of the items before us? So if you're here to speak on any of the items, we'll swear you in all at one time.
Yes, sir.
And at this point, can we disclose any ex parte? Commissioner Coleman?
Ordinance 2019-18 and his family, Coleman. I have no financial anything with this, but I want to disclose that.
Okay, Mr. Attorney?
Out of an abundance of caution, I would say withhold from voting, abstain from voting.
Yes, sir.
Ricky.
So you're going to abstain from H and I.
Sounds good.
Okay, all right, Commissioner Herson?
None.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
None.
Commissioner Norfleet? Okay, I have none as well. Okay, so The very first thing we'll do is we'll listen to a staff overview. That's just a summary. Then the applicant will be allowed to present with no time limit. Then staff will be allowed to present and offer a recommendation, also with no time limit. Do we have anybody here tonight who wishes to claim third-party intervener status? I did not get an email in advance, which is our policy, so there should be none. And I hear none. So then we will move to public comments, limited to 3 minutes each. And then the applicant will be given the ability to cross-examine. Staff will then be given the ability to cross-examine as well. And the members of the decision-making body, through the chair, will be allowed to ask questions of the staff, applicant, and any of the participants. Final arguments will then be presented by the applicant and then by the staff, related solely to the evidence and testimony presented at the hearings and introduced into the record. The city attorney has already advised the decision-making body as to the applicable law and factual findings that must be made to approve or deny the application, and he will continue to do so throughout the process. Then the board will deliberate on the application, and after deliberations, we will move for a motion. Does everybody understand our procedures? Okay, with that, we will begin in our first quasi-judicial, which is 2019-12, with the staff overview. Mr. Attorney, you want to read that into the record for us first before the staff overview? And we need to swear in, please.
Judy, do you want to swear in? Right.
Would you swear if you're here to speak on any issue from E all the way through K, please stand now to be sworn in by our city clerk.
Please raise your right hand and starting with the name, state your name for the record, please.
Brian Thomas.
Do you hereby swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Lieutenant Busher, if anybody comes in, Lieutenant Busher, just help us if you don't mind. Just alert us, please. Thank you.
Ma'am. And now, Mr. Attorney, would you read the...
I'm happy to, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance number 2019-12, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, annexing certain portions of unincorporated Alachua County identified as tax parcel number 04265-008-000, more specifically described in this ordinance as petitioned for by the property owners pursuant to Section 171.044 of the Florida statutes, making certain findings, providing for land use, zoning, and land development regulations, and enforcement of the same, providing directions to the clerk of the commission, providing a severability clause, and providing an immediate effective date. When we get to the point, the appropriate motion will be to pass, you can deny or continue ordinance number 2019-12 as read by title only.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. And I should say, folks, that items E through K are all similar. We recently had a referendum to annex in property from a lot of property owners in the same area. Once those annexations successfully approved, once those annexations are successful, we have to move the land use from county ag to city ag. So the questions may seem very similar because every single one of those items is the exact same question, exact same issue. So we might start moving more quickly through them at some point in time. And with that, Mr. Thomas, please give us staff's overview.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just a note to my knowledge, the first one that's the first quasi-judicial procedure, the agent for the voluntary annexation applicant was not able to make it and had a conflict with another commission meeting, and so he said his regrets, but I told him I thought we could make it through without him. So he won't be here, and I don't believe there's anybody representing any of the property owners in the larger annexations. And so this is a voluntary annexation request. Staff does recommend approval on first reading of ordinance 2019-12, and also request that we establish August 12th as the date when the enactment hearing will be tentatively scheduled. Staff provided notice to the County Commission on June 11th of the intended voluntary annexation as required by state law. No response has been received by staff relative to the application and the notification at this time. This is a small-scale annexation. It's one parcel constituting 4.86 acres. It's out on West Newberry Road. You all know it as the Pet Paradise facility next to Dudley Farms. A little closer up shot there with the aerial. And so the owners have requested to annex into the city of Newberry. And not only do we get another parcel, but we actually get another business as part of the annexation. So with that, conclude the presentation, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and there is no applicant here to present, so you're ready to, is that your presentation and your overview?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful, good job. Do we have any public comment on the presentation or the overview? Bringing Pet Paradise into the city of Newberry, because they want to come to the city of Newberry, as all people do these days. All right. We will move down. We don't have an applicant to cross-examine. And so staff's not going to do any cross-examination either. Does the board have any questions for staff? Okay. Skip that one as well. All right, we'll close the presentation and enter into deliberations. You skipped M and you went right to N, man. I can't believe. All right. I have a motion to approve from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner Coleman. Are there any questions from the dais on the motion on the floor? Any questions from the public on the motion on the floor? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. We're going to continue in quasi-judicial. We're going to begin with the staff presentation. I'm sorry, we're going to begin with the attorney reading ordinance 2019-16, and then we'll have staff's overview and presentation. Mr. Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, this is ordinance number 2019-16, CPA 19-03. An ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to an amendment to the future land use plan map of the City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan under the expedited amendment procedures established in sections 163.3184, subparagraph 2 and subparagraph 3 of the Florida statutes, and in conformance with sections 163.3161 through 163.3215 of the Florida statutes, providing for a change in future land use classification from Alachua County agriculture, less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres, to the City of Newberry agriculture, less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, which have been annexed thereto, tax parcel numbers 02515-003-008. Next parcel is 02515-004-000. Next parcel is 02515-004-001. And next parcel is 02515-004-002. Providing for severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2019-16 as read by title only.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Yes, sir.
Welcome, Ms. Wendy. We look forward to the brevity already on display from Mr. Thomas.
Your point is well taken. This first
Subtle,
item.
but well
Not so subtle.
This first item is dealing with the 4 parcels that you see in the lower left-hand side of your the screen, showing that you see the parcels owned by Pat Post and also by the Turlington group. So the next slide shows you the actual location in a closer picture, and you see that over on the left. And this is dealing with the comprehensive plan amendment, which changes the land use from county agriculture, rural agriculture, to city agriculture. And keep in mind, the land use, your future land use is what dictates the uses, and your zoning, which will come after this one, the request is to provide zoning that will implement that land use category. So the Planning and Zoning Board heard this item and recommended approval, that the City Commission approve this application and a vote for 3-0, and staff's recommendation is for approval of the ordinance. This is on first reading, and when, if you approve this on first reading, it will be transmitted to the state for their expedited review, which takes about, it gives you about 180 days from now until whenever, I mean, from the time that we get their comments. They have about 45-day process, and then 180 days that we hold the second public hearing, and then it can take effect. That's staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Winnie. Is that staff's overview and presentation?
Yes, it is.
Well done. We will move straight then to public comments. Anybody have any public comments on changing the land use from county to city? Okay, hearing none. That moves us to the dais. Does the dais have any questions for Wendy about changing the land use? Hearing none. Do we have any final arguments that staff would like to make to support your recommendation? Don't feel the need to.
No, sir.
All right. And we've already, and I do want to clarify that when we ask for ex parte, we ask for the whole plethora of quasi-judicials. So I'm not skipping that point. I just want to make sure if there was anything on a future one that you want to disclose, we'll revisit it now. None? Okay. Then we'll enter into deliberations or move to a motion to approve. Okay, I have a motion to approve from Commissioner Coleman, a second from Commissioner Hersom. Any questions, comments on the motion on the floor? Does the public have any questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. No one has come in new. We're good to go. We are on to ordinance 2019-20. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And Mr. Attorney, would you please read that into the record for us?
This is ordinance number 2019-20, LDR 19-08, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, relating to the amendment of the official zoning atlas for the rezoning of approximately 231.03 contiguous acres of land pursuant to an application by Pat M. Post and Toby Barton, Turlington Trust, owners, amending the official zoning atlas of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, providing for rezoning from Alachua County Agriculture A zoning district to City of Newberry Agriculture A zoning district on said acreage, located within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, on tax parcel numbers 02515-003-008. Next parcel is 02515-004-000. Next parcel is 02515-004-001. And last parcel number is 02515-004-002. Providing for severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2019-20 as read by title only.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, Ms. Wendy, go ahead and give us the overview and presentation at the same time.
This is the same property that you just heard, same location, same owners, and the recommendation that the Planning and Zoning Board, again, was also for approval, both the ordinance, which would approve the application, and staff's recommendation is for approval as well.
Okay, that was perfect. Well done. Applicant presentation, staff report. Do we have any public comment? Okay. Does the dais have any questions for staff? Okay. Hearing none, does staff like to make a final argument?
No.
No? Okay, we'll enter into deliberations, and we want to offer a motion to approve ordinance 2019-20. Want to mix it up a little bit here?
Motion to approve 2019-20.
Thank you, Commissioner Hersom. I have a motion from Commissioner Hersom, a second from Commissioner Norfleet. Any questions from the dais on the motion on the floor? Any questions from the public on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously, and we are on to first reading of ordinance 2019-18. Mr. Attorney, you're getting a lot of excitement.
Get a workout. This is ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to an amendment of the future land use plan map of the City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan under the expedited amendment procedures established in sections 163.3184, subparagraph 2, and subparagraph 3 of the Florida statutes, and in conformance with sections 163.3161 through 163.3215 of the Florida statutes, providing for a change in future land use classification from Alachua County agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres to City of Newberry agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, which have been annexed thereto per tax parcel number 02514-000-000, providing for severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2019-18 as read by title only.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, Ms. Wendy. Same issue, different parcel.
Yes, thank you. This application is, you can see that just on the, just north of Southwest 15th Avenue, on the western part of the city area. And then, again, this is application by Coleman and Coleman. And you see the area where it says application 19-04, the CPA, that's the area. And the Planning and Zoning Board heard this item on July 1st and recommended approval. And staff is recommending approval of the ordinance on first reading with transmittal to the state for expedited review.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wendy. Does the public have any comments on this item? Okay, hearing none. Does Dias like to examine staff? Any questions for staff, comments for staff? All right. Okay, would staff like to make any final arguments?
No, that's all.
Okay, we'll enter into deliberations, and we want to offer a motion to approve first reading of ordinance 2019-18. I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, second from Commissioner Hersom. Any questions from the dais on the motion on the floor? Any public questions for the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passed unanimously, and we are on to quasi-judicial public hearing and first reading of ordinance 2019-21. You guys are doing great, sticking with me. We're getting the same procedure. Mr. Attorney, will you please read the ordinance?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and the record reflects that Commissioner Coleman has abstained from voting from the last item as well as this next item.
Thank you.
The ordinance is number 2019-19, CPA 19-05, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to an amendment to the future land use plan map of the City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan of 10 or less acres of land under the small-scale development amendment procedures established under the small-scale amendment provisions of Section 163.3187 of the Florida statutes as amended, providing for a change in land use classification from Alachua County agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres to City of Newberry agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion at the appropriate time will be to pass ordinance number 2019-19 as read by title only.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Wendy, overview and presentation all at once again.
Didn't we just do Coleman and Coleman, the LDR 1909?
Oh, I skipped one. I'm sorry.
I mean, did we just, this is the
Oh,
one we
Lord.
just, did we do that one, or no?
I skipped one, I'm sorry.
We should be on
that's what I was thinking.
2019-21.
Yep, I just
Right.
did 2019-19, so I
Okay.
skipped one.
Let's go ahead and do 19 since we've read 19.
Okay, this,
right?
Good call.
this item is a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment, which is treated differently. Although I don't, okay, so that means you have the presentation for that one that you can bring up?
Commissioner Coleman can come back to the dais for this one. And while we're waiting for that presentation, let me just say that Commissioner Coleman handled the abstention perfectly. If you abstain, you sit down there. Well done, sir. Good job. Proud of you. Welcome back to a voting member.
Okay. So this application is for a comprehensive plan amendment. It is a small-scale plan amendment, which means that it's under 10 acres in size. It doesn't have to go through the same process of being reviewed by the state and the state agencies. And so what it means is that once this plan amendment, if it were to be approved, 31 days from that date of the second reading, it would become effective if there were no challenges. So this application, could you advance me?
You got to turn it off and turn it back on again. Reboot. Travis he can handle it for you.
Okay, I need.
About halfway up here, it'll start working naturally, though. Look at that. See, that's why he didn't even move. He knew it was going to start.
He didn't
working.
even move. He just made me think he was going to move. So you can see from the slide that this is where this is located on the west side, east-west. Okay, let me start this one again. This is the application by Troy Fowler for Vision Construction, and it is located on the west side of 266th Street. And the property was recently annexed into the city in May of 2019. The future land use map is the next step, which we have to amend that with a small-scale amendment that I mentioned earlier. The next step will be the rezoning application to implement that comprehensive plan amendment if it were to be approved, if that zoning is contingent upon the future land use amendment being approved. In this case, it's a plan amendment we're looking at, and the location again is shown on the future land use map. It's going from county rural agriculture to city agriculture designation, and the Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval, and the staff recommends approval as well on first reading.
Okay. Thank you. We threw you a curveball. You handled it great. We appreciate that. Okay, public comment. Same concept here. Changing the land use. Any questions? Okay, hearing none. Does the dais have any questions for staff? Would staff like to offer a final argument for why you are offering recommendation? If not, we will enter into deliberations. Does anyone have a motion to approve ordinance 2019-19? I have a motion from Commissioner Norfleet. I have a second from Commissioner Farnsworth. Any questions from the dais on the motion on the floor? Any questions from the public on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passed unanimously, and we're going to go back to the first reading of ordinance 2019-21.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, this will be ordinance number 2019-21, LDR 19-09. An ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, relating to the amendment of the official zoning atlas for the rezoning of approximately 93.55 contiguous acres of land pursuant to an application by Coleman and Coleman owners, amending the official zoning atlas of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, providing for rezoning from Alachua County Agriculture A zoning district to City of Newberry Agriculture A zoning district on said acreage located within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, on tax parcel number 02514-000-000, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2019-21 as read by title only.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. And for the record, Commissioner Coleman is abstaining from this vote, and he has left the dais. Ms. Wendy, give us the overview and the presentation.
This has an application by Coleman and Coleman. It's for the 93.55 acres that you heard earlier going through for a comprehensive plan amendment. And this is the rezoning to go from county agriculture to city agriculture for the zoning district. And that's what's recommended by staff as well, let's see, and by the Well, that's
wrote
what
the whole
the
thing.
staff is recommending, approval as well. The Planning and Zoning Board also on July 1st recommended approval of the application as well. And this application is contingent upon the approval of the plan amendment.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wendy. That concludes the presentation?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Do we have any public comment on this motion? It's the companion to the previous Coleman motion. Okay, we'll move to the dais. Does the dais have any questions for staff? Okay, hearing none, we'll enter, does staff want to make a final argument?
No, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll enter it into deliberations, and I'll accept a motion to approve 2019-21. I have a motion from Commissioner Herson, a second from Commissioner Farnsworth. Any questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? Does the public have any questions on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passed unanimously, and we are at our last one. Great job, guys. Welcome back, Commissioner Coleman. Mr. Attorney, would you please read ordinance 2019-22, which is the companion to 2019-19?
I will certainly do that, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance number 2019-22, LDR 19-10. An ordinance of the City of Newberry relating to the amendment of the official zoning atlas for the rezoning of less than 5% of the total land area of the city, pursuant to an application by Troy L. Fowler, agent for Vision Construction, Inc., owner, amending the official zoning atlas of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, providing for rezoning from Alachua County Agriculture A to City of Newberry Agriculture A on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, which have been annexed thereto, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2019-22 as read by title only.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Ms. Wendy?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, this application is to change the zoning on the property that was just discussed, around 5 acres. And this is the same location as it was before for the plan amendment, and the Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval of the application to go from county agriculture to city agriculture for the zoning district for that small-scale plan amendment. The amendment, once it goes, this is for first reading, once it goes through, and it's contingent upon the approval of the plan amendment, the CPA 19-05. And once, if that were to be approved, then this item would become effective after you approved this on second reading.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Wendy. Is there any public comment on this application? Okay. Hearing none, does the dais have any questions for staff? Hearing none, we will enter in. Is that your final argument, Ms. Wendy?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. We'll enter into deliberations, and I will accept a motion to approve ordinance 2019-22. Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman, a second from Commissioner Norfleet. Do I have any questions or comments on the motion on the floor from the dais? Any questions or comments on the motion on the floor from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passed unanimously. Thank you, staff. I know that it can seem a little tedious when we have quasi-judicial procedures like that, especially when they all have the same subject matter, but I guarantee you if the topic is controversial or you're on the other side of it, you want to have the opportunity to go through that process and have your comments heard. We welcome all of those landowners into the City of Newberry, and we hope that in the future they'll dole themselves out to different meetings. With that, we will move on to our agenda. Item A on the agenda is Resolution 2019-22. And Mr. Attorney, one last time for tonight, please.
Yes, sir. This is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, providing for a schedule of refunds of fees and charges for matters pertaining to commercial development in the City of Newberry, as specified in Section 14-110, Fees Enumerated, Section 98-192, Charge Imposed, and Section 98-172, charge imposed of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations and Resolution 2018-08 to stimulate economic development, providing qualification criteria, providing severability, repealing all resolutions in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion will be to pass Resolution 2019-22 as read by title only.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Sir.
Before we entertain a motion, why don't we do the presentation so we can get our motion just right?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, since the commission has seen this a number of times now, staff, the recommendation is actually receive a presentation and provide additional direction to staff if necessary, or if the commission is comfortable with the draft, then to please move forward on the draft resolution. Just quick review. Staff had presented a three-part series on the different types of development fees that go into new construction for commercial development. They basically boil down to planning fees for different things like rezonings, land use changes, site plan review, building department fees for the actual building permits and plan reviews, and then utility department related fees, which are for connections and capacity fees. Back on December of 18, we brought this forward to the Commission for consideration and direction. The Commission directed the staff to go back and draft a resolution. On June 24th, we presented the draft to the Commission for their review, and at that time, the Commission requested that staff come back with some examples of different levels of construction, commercial construction, and specifically roughly how long it would take for the new taxes generated from ad valorem taxes to offset the refunds that would have been granted under the different examples. And so, again, just as a refresher, the refunds would be reserved under the proposed resolution to new commercial construction or expansion of existing businesses only. Wouldn't be for remodelings and such like that. So it would be a negotiated amount between developer and the City Commission based on either meeting or exceeding design standards for the area of town that they're in, number of new jobs potentially created, and capital investment made in the community in the new development. The proposal is that they could receive up to 100% refund of the first $10,000 of development fees they incur, and then they could get up to 50% of the next $40,000. So for a total of, if they total $50,000 in development fees, they could get 100% of the first $10,000, and then up 50% of the remaining, up 40,000, up to 50 total.
And Brian, we're talking about refunds here, so they
Yes,
have to produce the product.
Yes,
If
sir.
they produce what they say, and this board has the potential to negotiate what that looks like in advance.
Yes, sir.
Then once they produce that and they fulfill their side of the bargain, then these would be refunds. They wouldn't be upfront.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, staff recommends that the fees would be collected up front as always, and then upon confirmation that they had met all of the requirements negotiated with the commission for the refund, that staff could sign off then, and they could receive the refund based on compliance with the contractual obligation.
And this resolution gives the commission the ability to negotiate independently with every single commercial development based on job growth, size, impact, how nice they're going to build the building. All of those kinds of things could be part of the negotiation so that a board could determine how many refunds they want to offer.
Because every project is somewhat unique, then it gives the commission the ability to come up with a unique negotiated offer for refunds based on each individual project.
Okay.
So again, the recommendation from staff is that they would be refunded out of the city's general fund. So it would be a budgeted line item. There would be a total annual amount of $50,000 given back in refunds for all projects. And so once we exceeded that $50,000 with 1, 2, 3 projects, then in order to grant any additional refunds, we'd have to come back to the commission for permission to increase the $50,000 limit. basically, we just covered all fees to be paid up front, and then refunded after the compliance with the negotiated criteria. And so staff went back and we did a couple of examples. First one would be some sort of commercial retail development. The final appraised value would be $500,000 for the purposes of this example, $500,000. Again, for assumption for the example, 2 equivalent residential units. ERUs are what we base the utility charges or fees for capacity and connections, hookups on. And then, so if you look at a breakdown for a typical project like this, you'd have a site plan review by the planning department, which would be $2,700. You total up the value of the building permit fees, it's going to be about $4,700, and then utility connection fees for 2 ERUs are going to be a little over $13,000 for a total of $20,544. So with total development fees totaling $20,544, the total eligible refund would be the first $10,000 of development fees, and then half of the remainder over $10,000. And so you have another $10,544. Half of that plus the $10,000 would equal $15,272. Assumptions for this example are that the millage rate remains at 5.9999, the current, and that the City Commission granted the full eligible refund amount. And so with that, the annual value of the new taxes generated from the ad valorem millage rate would be about $3,000. If you take that and divide it out, you're looking at about 5 years on a project of that magnitude with these parameters to pay back the amount of the refund in the additional ad valorem taxes collected. And we can discuss this one, or we can move on to the
You have
next
another
if you'd
example?
like. Yes, sir.
Any questions about the example? Commissioner Herson?
No.
Are you pondering one? Or?
This one, just.
Okay.
do the second example.
Go right ahead.
Okay. The second one would be a larger project, industrial development, totaling appraised value of $5 million on completion. Number of equivalent residential units on this one would be estimated at 5. And so you see the breakdown of the fees: planning $2,700 for site review, building permit fees substantially more, of course, because it's based on the building permit fees are based on the value of the project. And then utility connection fees is higher because you have 5 as opposed to 2 ERUs. You have about a little over $80,000 in development fees total. So then again, you get the first $10,000 off. You get half of the next $40,000 up to a total of $50,000 in development fees that you base your refund on. So they would qualify for the maximum $30,000 refund amount. Again, same assumptions: millage rate of 5.9999. And commission willing to grant the entire eligible amount. So you're right at about $30,000 a year in additional annual revenues for ad valorem tax increases. And so in this instance, it would take 1 year, basically. And I guess I should back up and say, in reality, it's going to take 2 years, because upon completion, there's another year before the property appraiser's information catches up with the tax collector's office and it gets posted. And so 5 years would really, on the previous example, would really be 6 when you factor that in, and 1 year here would actually be 2.
Any questions about this example? Is that the last example, Brian?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Some additional considerations for the commission. If the commission didn't want to be in the position of constantly negotiating or negotiating these things, you could entertain the idea of granting staff the authority to do the negotiations based on specific criteria set by the commission. You could basically say that all projects automatically qualify for the maximum as long as they meet the criteria established by the commission. You could require an annual reauthorization of the resolution, or you could sunset to a future date, requiring reauthorization at the end of that sunset period.
Okay, I think we need to give clear direction to staff on these 4 things. But before we do that, let's have a head nod. If this, I don't want to enter in, it's getting late already, I don't want to enter into an hour-long conversation about these considerations if we're not going to proceed with this program. So can I get a head nod whether this program, now you certainly hold the right to change your mind if you don't like the way these considerations go, but is this something that we want to consider as a program? Okay. All right, so let's go through this one by one because I think all four of these considerations are important for a program like this. Generally, in most other instances, staff acts as the first line of negotiations. And then if the developer is happy with that, proceeds on. If the developer is not happy with that, then the developer has the right to come to the commission and make a case for why he or she thinks they should have a different deal, a different negotiation. It would be my recommendation to keep that sort of same policy direction as letting staff handle those first rounds of negotiations instead of entertaining in a public forum that extended conversation. But this is a new program, so there's nothing tying this to how we do anything else in the city of Newberry.
And Mr. Mayor, just to chime in on that, I recommend, you'll never hear me recommend that the commission negotiate during a public meeting. I think that puts the city and the commission at a disadvantage. It's not nearly as productive. So I think that anytime you're negotiating any type of agreement, it should be through the filter of staff. Give staff all the direction you want on the front end. Call staff from time to time to say how are things going, but let us take the first cut at trying to get there. If there are some outstanding issues to be resolved in a public meeting, we will articulate exactly what those are and let the commission make final decisions. And I'm sorry we weren't clearer in that with the resolution. I'll assume responsibility for that.
Thoughts on that, on the wording of that? First, Commissioner Farnsworth.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with the granting the staff the first authority to negotiate. But I also have a question about the number 2. Is there any situation where you would not automatically qualify for maximum refunds if they meet all the criteria?
Mr. Mayor, they could qualify. That basically, number 2 is saying you've established all these criteria, there's no negotiation required because they've met all of those criteria, and so they automatically qualify, and we automatically would be providing them with a refund upon request once they met compliance. So you would establish your criteria, very rigid, more rigid criteria, and then it would eliminate the need for negotiation because once they checked all of those boxes, they would automatically qualify then, and it would just be a process rather than a negotiation and then approval by the commission.
And that's pretty much what's going to happen anyhow, I'm guessing.
I mean, I'm a little confused by that consideration as well, and I don't want to try to find it in the ordinance somewhere, but I know the ordinance speaks to job creation and those kinds of things, but our presentations have just been about if you meet this development level, you would qualify for, but the words throughout the whole resolution are if you qualify for this. So I think that gives this body the ability to tie job growth to it if you so chose to do so. That's the intent?
Yes, as it's written now, without these additional considerations, as it's written right now, you would look at each project individually. And you'd say, you may have a project that's going to provide $5 million in capital investment, but only going to provide maybe 10 jobs. You might, on the flip side, you could have one that's only going to be a $500,000 worth of capital investment, but somehow they provide 100 jobs. I mean, so as written, it gives you the ability to balance all of those considerations in the negotiation, and then decide based on the outcome of the negotiation how much you want to grant.
Yeah, the idea of just a rigid, without negotiation, as I read what's in there, creation of new jobs. Jobs could be just 2, and if you qualify for the full amount, then that's not a huge amount of job growth in the city. And so I guess I would, if we're going to keep the resolution that non-specific, I'd want the latitude to be able to negotiate a more solid number.
I would tend to agree. I guess the flip side of that coin is putting staff and the commission in the position of, picking winners and losers. So I think we have to give some pretty clear direction to staff. What are we looking at? And I think you guys have done that to a degree. What you're looking for in this commercial development. I think we are looking for return on investment, and job growth would be the two highlights, right? But I'm not sure a way to, without giving ourselves the latitude to recognize that somebody may come in and not necessarily be building a very big building, but may be creating a lot of jobs. And if we make it too rigid, we would write them out. Commissioner Norfleet?
Approving this resolution there, you'll be coming back with the considerations and the criteria if we so choose so, if a business meets that criteria, right?
Mr. Mayor, the resolution could be voted on as is, the draft as is, and then each individual project would be evaluated on those three criteria as mentioned without setting limits on any of those. Or the commission could say, okay, provided they meet a minimum job creation of this, a minimum capital investment of this, and a minimum compliance with the design standards, that kind of thing. Or as it is, you leave it wide open and each one is negotiated independently.
Yeah, I'd like to see the staff negotiate directly, but have a strict criteria that comes back in front of us that we can approve. That's maybe not just one job, but multiple jobs or whatever that number is.
And I would remind you, there's no rush for us to vote on this tonight. We're absent one commissioner. We've placed the line item in the budget to fund this program. So I would recommend we take our time to make sure we get it right. This has the potential to be a very attractive offering for the city of Newberry to encourage commercial development. But I don't want us to feel like we have to rush into it. The money is already in the budget to fund it, so let's spend some time thinking about how we want to do this. So Commissioner Norfleet's point, you want the body to give the criteria ahead of time, or you want them to write in that criteria and bring it back to the dais, and then we can negotiate what they put in there. That way we have a more pointed conversation. And are we all in agreement that the highlighted features would be return on investment, meaning the size of the growth, and job creation? Is there anything else that we want to put in there as a main consideration?
As written, we also have in there, facility construction adheres to certain architectural standards. And while I agree, I like that idea. That was, the first two are substantially greater economic issues, but that third one it's almost a yes or no. It did or it didn't. And I'm fine leaving that in there, but
I think
potentially reorder those in
part of the conversation. And I agree, reorder them in terms of priority.
And then as I think of how we go about doing that, idea of indexing and things like that is how we go about balancing jobs or capital investment. I don't know what those numbers are yet, but
some guidelines so we could look at it. Okay. Any more comments on item 2 for consideration? Staff feel like you have clear direction on what to bring back?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think we do.
Give us a draft that we can actually mince those words out. All right. Do we want to require this every year? There is a general fund implication here every year, and in my mind, that would mean it would be up for conversation on a yearly basis. Or you could, I see 3 and 4 kind of together, right? Do you want to sunset it now, or do you want to every year in the budget we have this conversation?
I prefer every year, but
My question on that is, you know, what's the time to refund? Then if somebody enters into this agreement, what's that time between then they go through negotiation and then they might get the refund back? And so if we're on an annual basis, are they going to time out?
Yeah, and I don't see how that could possibly work, right? We're gonna give them a refund halfway through the budget, and or we're gonna give them part of the refund halfway through the budget, and then so we'll have to kind of keep track of this. Is that what staff's?
Mr. Mayor, if it requires annual reauthorization, if we have folks in the queue that we've agreed are due, we wouldn't say, well, the year ended and you're out. We would carry forward funding for whoever made the agreement. And after a year, the commission says, we don't want to do that anymore, that's fine, we won't do any new ones. But we wouldn't cut people off just because the fiscal year ended. We would carry it until the end of the agreement. I suspect things like building, you know, you get a CO and we know, or at least the property assessor goes out and says, here's the value, and it meets what we anticipated. Jobs, I would say that after we're going to give 1 year, we're going to give time certain. Each little agreement will have a time certain to produce jobs after the CO, and that would kind of be the end of the agreement with each individual entity. Is you've completed the building, the property values have been assessed, and you've had your time to create jobs. Did you do it? If you did, here's your rebate. If you didn't, we'll discuss it.
Which means that we may decide to end the program, but still have budgetary obligations for that shift over year. Right.
That's exactly right.
Commissioner Herson?
And the other thought is, you know, if we're trying to use this as a carrot to bring business or development into the city, with it only, if we're on an annual reauthorization, it's hard to dangle that out there in front of somebody because they may not be able to move within that budget year. And then if we do not reauthorize it, we've lost that carrot. Whereas at least if we sunset it, there's a window before it goes away. So I offer those just as considerations rather than commitments of thought.
I mean, it is an interesting point. I mean, thinking back of most of my conversations with developers, from the moment they have the first inkling of the idea to the moment they pull the trigger is rarely within the same calendar year. They generally like to think about things for a little while. Thoughts, Commissioner Norfleet?
If you go with a sunset, what kind of time frame year-wise?
Ron, do you remember, we ran a similar program, wasn't as big as this, came out of the Economic Development Committee, but I think it was annual authorization as well, or was it annual?
Yes.
I mean, I don't think it's out of the realm to say that we're gonna do this for a 3-year period. You're looking at $150,000 general fund implication, but the only time you're expending that money is if someone's actually developing the property. So it's not like you're spending $50,000 a year hoping that someone's going to develop. You only spend the money if the development is actually occurring. You know, I think the only other answer to Commissioner Herson's challenge would be to be able to say the commission really is in favor of this program, and I anticipate they're going to reauthorize it every year, but that's certainly not a certainty.
My counsel to you would be to leave it alone and not sunset it and not do it on an annual basis.
Not do it on an annual basis?
Well, it's a resolution that, since it's a resolution, you can change it at any commission meeting. It's not like an ordinance, so you can just repeal it at any point in time that this is costing us too much money, it's a bad program, we don't like it. You can change it at virtually you can do it almost without, you gotta have staff draft it up, but you could direct us in a very quick manner to get rid of the program if that's what you wish to do.
Commissioner Coleman.
I don't want to kick the can down the road no more. I move to approve 2019-22 as written.
You don't want to see the criteria?
I thought we already did.
Well, we gave staff direction for the criteria, but
Right.
they haven't written it up yet. It's close. I'd say it's 95% there. But the
We did-
conversation that you guys have had here tonight
Right.
hasn't been articulated
Okay.
quite perfectly in there. Not to shoot down the motion if someone wants to second it. We do have a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to second that motion, or do you want to? It died. Pull it back?
I'll
Okay.
pull it back.
Pull it back. All right. Commissioner Farnsworth?
Commissioner Herson made a good point about the 3-year period or whatever, but even at the 2-year period, if somebody decides, then there's going to be in the same situation as doing it yearly. So I think we should follow the attorney's advice and just make it perpetual, and then if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
Well,
get
the
rid of it.
resolution is perpetual. The funding is not.
Yeah, that's true.
You guys have to vote on the funding every single year.
And that could be stopped
Right.
at any time.
So, I mean, I would tend to say the resolution stays on the books, and every year you guys have a conversation. The program may work out, and you might want to increase the funding. You may want to say, well, we'll decrease the funding and make it a little more selective in the process, because we really want to only do one. I don't know. Give you guys some opportunity. My recommendation for tonight, you've given a head nod that you want to continue this conversation. You've given staff the feedback they need to put that last 5% in. Let's let them put that 5% in, bring it back to us. We'll have a full dais and a full resolution, and we'll be ready for a vote at that point. Again, you've already got the $50,000 in the budget, that was the bigger decision. Now we have to figure out how to, not a bigger decision, but you funded the program. Now you're just trying to figure out how to actually implement it fairly and equitably across the board. I don't think we need to table it, because we were just looking, well, we did read the resolution in. We have it as a vote, not as a discussion. Mr. Attorney, we did read the resolution in, and we have it listed as something we're going to vote on. We don't have it listed as a discussion item. So do we need to table it?
We don't need to table it on this one, because there's no advertisement or any of that sort of thing. And I don't remember if there's actually a motion on the table right now.
There's not. He pulled it.
So
Okay.
you can just,
So you'll take our feedback, and next meeting, we'll have this finalized?
Yes, sir.
Does that sound good? Head nod. Does any public have any comments or questions on what we're talking about, a potential commercial development incentive program? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. We will move on to our after-school and summer camp program operations agreements.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I am here to discuss the after-school and summer camp agreement. Staff's recommended action is to authorize the city manager to execute the lease agreement with Greenfield Preschool to operate an after-school and summer camp program. If you'll recall, 2018-2019 school year, we decided to contract the after-school program out, and we entered into an agreement with Greenfield, and we are going to test it out and see how it went. It was very successful, I believe, both for us, took a burden off of our staff and our operations and allowed us to focus more on the sports side, and it also provided a really good program through Greenfield for our residents. In June of this year, we put out an invitation to negotiate, to solicit vendors to provide this service through a 4-year agreement. We had 5 to 6 plan holders who received the ITM, but we only had one respondent, which was Greenfield. So we have discussed an agreement. The terms would be 4 years, and that is to provide an after-school and summer camp. This for 2018-2019, we did an after-school agreement, and then we did a summer camp agreement. This would be one, basically, calendar year. And 4 of them. Location would be Eastern Newbury Sports Complex. They mainly have the gym, the classroom, and the concession area for check-in. And that would be between after-school hours, which would be from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. Summer camp would be from 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. A monthly payment to the city, approximately $4,600. At year 3, that would increase by 2%, and then year 4 as well. The invitation, it was on the invitation, and we solicited that number. So, our recommendation is to proceed with the agreement. I think it works really well. Greenfield is also happy with it. So,
Does the commission have any questions for Travis? Travis, this pulls us completely out of this process. So if Greenfield raises their prices, they make changes in their offerings or those kinds of things, we're not part of that negotiation.
We're not.
What if they decide not to provide the service at all?
Well, we have obviously an out in there for both parties for convenience, but that termination would be if they decided that they didn't want to provide the service anymore and they were in the middle of an after-school of the school year, they'd have to end the school year before they exited. It would give us time to...
So they can't just yank it right out from under
No.
parents who are dependent on that service to get through the school
No,
year?
whatever program they're in the middle of, they have to finish the program out before exiting.
Okay.
Same goes for us.
All right. Does the public have any questions on this lease agreement? Okay. And you're looking for a motion to authorize city
Yes,
manager
please.
to negotiate this out?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll entertain that motion now. Execute.
Yep.
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner
Second.
Farnsworth, thank you.
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Herschel. Does the commission have any questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Does the public have any questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we come, unbelievably, at 9:07 to, hey, I don't remember D, but let's enjoy C first, right? C represents the very last obligation of the city of Newberry in completing this Canterbury deal. At this point on, depending on the way you vote, obviously, it is now in the hands of the Alachua County Commission to do their part of the deal. So
I'm skipping ahead of the agenda.
I was wondering why you were coming up, actually, but I figure, well, you wear a lot of hats. So, Mr. Manager, are you going to lead the County Extension Office's lease agreements?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, City Attorney Walker is going to lead the discussion. They prepared the agenda item, they negotiated the majority of the agreement, ran things by us, and I think it's appropriate that they take the lead on this discussion.
All right.
This is a pretty straightforward land lease agreement. 99 years is the provision for it. The basic gist of it is that the county's going to pay us $1 a year, and then we're going to allow them to build an ag extension office on the 5 acres of land to operate the ag extension and also an auditorium. And there are terms in the agreement we'll get to in a minute that allow the city to use the property on a rent-free basis for a period of time each year. So they're going to get underway to build this out. It'll be in conjunction with the fairgrounds, and so it should be a symbiotic type situation. One of the big things that we did when we closed on this property is to get access via an easement over a little portion of the land. There's a 25-foot right-of-way that goes to other property owners in the back, and so the county and the city have the right-of-way through an easement to cross over that 25-foot strip of land to access directly from the fairgrounds to the where the ag extension office is going to be located. The city, under this agreement, is called the landlord, is required to put an extension of our municipal central water system and wastewater system out to the premises. And then the cost with capacity charges, meters, and extending the system onto the premises will be ours. The tenant accepts the conveyance, the ownership, and maintenance of the responsibilities of the infrastructure on their side of the meter. So we get the wastewater and the water lines out to the premises. They have to do everything on their side of the meter. And I guess the way of looking at this is that this is ultimately our building. Might take 99 years, but it is our building ultimately. So that's how, and we're of course incentivizing the building of this, and this is part of the negotiation to bring the fairgrounds to our city, which has a huge agricultural background. So it all kind of fits together as the idea behind it. And it also gets them out of their ag extension office, which has been blue tarped for 5 years now.
3 years at least.
So it's helping out that situation greatly. We're going to make sure all the governmental approvals are all taken care of. We're allowing them to do their building permits and pull the building permits to get this done. They might, the tenant may grant licenses to third parties for the use of the IFAS extension office, the auditorium, any part thereof. So that's part of the lease process. It's our anticipation that they're going to put on certain programs every year, and hopefully this becomes a very popular used facility the way it's constructed, and that's the intent of what it is that we're doing. Landlord, us, we warrant the right to do this, and by buying the property, we have the right to lease out this premises. When the lease is terminated, then they have to give us over the improvements to the land. Those are all fixtures to the land, and we gain whatever the improvements are on the premises. There's termination provisions and remedies. Tenant's option for cause. If we breach it, then they've got to give us 30 days notice, and then we have to go through a resolution procedure in order to rectify a breach. Likewise, if they're in non-payment of their dollar, then we can put them on notice. Or if they're under other provisions, then we can put them on notice for default under the lease. If the defaulting party terminates this lease and institutes action in court of competent jurisdiction to enforce the provisions, then there are rights to potentially to damages as well. Then we can, and also there's a tenant may terminate this lease without cause upon 90 days written notice. I cannot imagine that that's going to be exercised, but there is an out provision for the county in that instance. If the property is taken by a public authority for some reason, if eminent domain by some other authority takes over the use of this facility, then the portion of the premises that's taken by the taking would be percentage would be taken off the lease. There's an abatement for rent if they can't operate under the tenancy, then they could abate a portion of the rent. Again, we're talking about in dollars, so that really doesn't make a whole lot of difference in this proceeding. Notices are to be provided to our city manager and the county manager if anybody has to notify one another for some reason under the lease. We're both entitled to immunity under Section 768. Their insurance covers them, our insurance covers us. Commissioner Martin said there's, in the original draft, there wasn't an indemnification procedure. It's a good thing about having an insurance guy on our commission, so he got us that word. We took some indemnification language out of, I think it was our firefighters interlocal agreement, dumped that into there. David Forziano said, well, we can't really object to that language because that's our language we put into the firefighter agreement. So we added that in today to today's language in the agreement. basically what that means is that if they do anything wrong or they have negligence on their side of the coin, they adopt that and they indemnify us from that negligence. Same thing for us. If we do anything that causes a problem, we have negligent acts, then we accept that and indemnify them under our insurance provisions. The bottom line is, if there's some lawsuit, they're going to get sued, we're going to get sued. That's really the bottom line. The auditorium will be used for an auditorium purposes on a first-come, first-served basis. And so we can put in for the use of it, but if the premises has already been rented, then it's on a first-come, first-served basis, essentially. Landlord is not entitled to rent free during the use of the agricultural center in the months of January, February, March, April, or May. Those are blackout months, except that the landlord may use the agricultural center rent-free during the weekend, Friday through Sunday, that is closest to April 15th. And that's, of course, for Westfest is what my understanding of the anticipated provisions are. Landlord reserves the ag center for at least 90 days prior to a scheduled event. Weekend is not already reserved by another user. Then the aforementioned exception of blackout months would apply towards the 5 events for a particular year at issue. So we have 5 events total each calendar year, totaling not more than 10 days per year that we can use the premises rent-free and reserve the use. The rest of the language is all legalese. There's a severability clause. Applicable law, of course, is Letcher County, Florida, and that's an exclusive venue for any actions that might transpire under this agreement. And this is the full agreement between the parties. Other standard legalese clauses. There's the legal description is attached to the premises along with the grant of easement. The appropriate motion, Mr. Mayor, would be for yourself and the other appropriate city officials to enter into the agreement. My understanding is through the manager that this will be on the county diocese tomorrow.
County manager's authorized.
The county manager is already authorized.
Oh, that's right, that's right. So that is the gist of it. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer it. And, if not, that is the appropriate motion.
Okay, do we have any questions about the lease agreement for legal?
This is a condition precedent to our interlocal agreement, so we have to do this by
Tonight.
August 6th, 8th, actually
Tomorrow, yeah.
unless we get an extension.
Yeah, the county's deadline for getting an extension is tomorrow. If this isn't completed, they're gonna request the extension.
So we made it just in the nick of time.
And we apologize for bringing this up to you so late in the day, but we just had the closing last week on 5 acres. There was a lot of negotiation that went back and forth with the property owners on the 25-foot easement. So that's kind of how things have gotten backed up to this point. County Attorney's Office drew up the lease. We got it 3 days ago, so that's brings us up to date.
Commissioner Farnsworth, you have a question?
Nope. I move to approve the county extension office lease agreement.
Okay, have a motion.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner Herson. Any questions from the dais on the lease agreement? Any questions from the public on the lease agreement? Before I call for a vote, I want to thank Folds and Walker and Malby for all the work that they have done. I would include Clay Martin in that gratitude. I have not done a very good job of communicating to the community the monument of the task underhand when you have to negotiate between 4 property owners and 2 governments. That's a recipe for getting absolutely nothing done. And you guys bulldogged that through to the end. And I didn't feel the need to communicate it because I always had 100% faith that it was going to all work out in the end, and it did. So, thank
Clay
you.
is really the guy that did this. Newberry boy, no surprise that He bulldogged it all the way through, and like a true Panther, but he got it done.
Well, we appreciate it, and this does bring, with a successful vote tonight, this does bring Newberry's obligations at acquiring Canterbury and making it ready to host the Alachua County Youth Fair and Ag Fairs and the IFAS to a close, and it will now become Alachua County Commission's job to fulfill their part. So if there are no questions from the public, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. Well done. That takes us to item D, which is the invoices. And Commissioner Norfleet, you have to pull those off. So if you have any specific questions you'd like to pose to staff.
Yeah, I just have, just one question. I don't know if it's a question or just kind of a concern, if we should be concerned about something. I noticed on there's a charge on there for the sharps. Or where is that coming from? Kind of where, I mean, what's the need for a sharps container for the city? Are we having a needle problem or some
Mr.
kind of
Mayor,
issue
it's
with
related to our fire department. It's the sharps from the trucks, the EMS.
Okay, that was it.
Thank you, sir. And that takes us to comments. We'll begin with City Manager. Oh, Lord.
Mr. Mayor?
Recognize that it is.
Mr. Mayor, do we need to approve the invoices?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Now they've been pulled off, we do need to. Thank you, Commissioner Farnsworth. I have a motion to approve the invoices.
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner Coleman. Any questions about the invoices from the dais? Any other questions about the invoices from the dais? Questions from the public about the invoices? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Now we're on to an abbreviated city manager comment list.
Mr. Mayor, I was first going to suggest that the commission vote to extend the meeting.
Yeah.
And then I was going to go into my comment. I'm kidding. First, I would lead with the commission is to be commended for plowing through 24 items for consideration in the time that you did. That's outstanding work. And I'll be as quick as I can. Last week, the city of Newberry was invited to present before DEO and competitive Florida cities. We presume that we were part of a couple of competitive Florida cities. We got there, we were it. And the reason I'm just reporting is not for staff accolades, but the city of Newberry in the competitive Florida program, which is now in its 5th year, probably 20 to 25 cities, is viewed by the Department of Economic Opportunity as the beacon of how competitive Florida cities are to go. We are their showcase, and it wasn't just me. The staff was there. I was stunned. I mean, I felt like we were going to have to give autographs before it was done. People coming up and ask us, how do you do it? How do you become a Newberry? I kid you not. DEO staff or, hey, before you leave the building, stop by. We've got a few questions for you. It was really a different experience than we anticipated. And like I said, I thought it was worthy of sharing with the commission, because when you just have your eyes down, working on what's in front of you, don't necessarily know what the rest of the world thinks about your work. And at least in Tallahassee, Florida, the work that we're doing in economic development is well revered by the Department of Economic Opportunity. That's their job. Also last week we attended the FMEA annual conference. Great opportunity to network with our industry peers and to learn about cutting edge trends in the industry. Probably the most significant thing there was that Bill Conrad, our former mayor and our current FMPA liaison, completed a 6-year term as the chairman of the board. There's a term limit, so 6 years was the maximum that he could serve as the chairman. He continues on the board as Newberry's representative, but he has been a champion for public power, and his legacy will be, he's the guy that was looking out for the ratepayer. It is really rare that an elected official ends up in that position, and Bill served with distinction and honor representing ratepayers of Newberry in particular. He indicates that that's why he was interested in joining the board and running for commission to begin with, is people would bring him his bills and say, that's just too much, something's got to change. And when we show that graph of how much Wholesale power costs have reduced. I think it's about $13 over 8 years, $13 a month. It's 10% decrease in power bills. It's all, Bill was championing that, but it was all from support and direction given from this community and this board. Also, just to mention to you that attendance at the annual conferences, that one in the summer is really geared toward elected officials. If there's ever any interest, they waive the first-time attendance fees. That's the registration fee. There's still hotel fees, but very powerful. A lot of information, gives you a whole new perspective on what it's like to own and operate an electric utility. And so I just throw that out there for next year. As mentioned a couple times, we closed on the Davis parcel, which is part of our commitment to Alachua County to bring the county agricultural center out here. And I will echo, Foles, Walker, and Maltby and Clay Martin were just huge down the stretch in making this happen. Just could not give them more accolades. Upcoming, this is kind of the long list. Nikki Freed, the Commissioner of Agriculture, is visiting Newberry on Tuesday, July 30th. She wants to learn about the Ag Tech Park. So we're very excited about that opportunity, and we're going to solicit her support for the project with the legislature and with the University of Florida, and any area that she has influence on. We're hoping that her support will really help move the project forward. We have a law enforcement workshop next Monday on July the 29th. We will be getting you information this week. There's a lot of information to disseminate. We'll start rolling out information for your perusal this week. We have 2 budget workshops in August. One is over proprietary funds, which mostly includes our enterprise funds. And then at the end of August, we have a wrap-up budget. I believe that's on every commissioner's schedule. I didn't write the dates down, so either Dallas can yell them out, or we'll just agree that we have 2 in August, and the dates have already been determined.
Did we get the dates corrected from the last budget workshop?
We did.
Publicly on the,
The ones on your calendar.
Yeah,
are now correct.
yeah. The ones on the calendar invites have always
Have
been
always
correct.
been correct.
The presentation, we have
Okay.
in error.
On Wednesday, August 7th is the proprietary funds at 6 p.m. And Wednesday, August 28th at 6 p.m. is the budget workshop wrap-up.
All right. We've already discussed that we're going to finalize our fire assessment in August. Also, just as a foreshadowing, any utility rate charges happen by the way of ordinances. We'll be initiating those in August after the August workshop on enterprise funds. Budget hearings in September. We have 2 budget hearings, one to adopt the preliminary budget, one to adopt the final budget. In addition, we'll be making a decision about law enforcement, or we're expecting to make a decision about law enforcement in September. That's the commission's decision, of course, but we're having the workshop in late July so that we can have some 6 to 8 weeks to compile additional information, negotiate contracts based on what the commission would like to see us do. And then in October, we had charter review workshops. How many?
2, maybe the 3rd.
2, potentially a 3rd. So I say all that to say we got a lot on our plates right now. The commission, staff, we have a ton going on. A couple of other things. The local option fuel tax, this dialogue is supposed to crank up any time. The county is going to crank up those decisions, but we've been talking about it cranking up for 3 to 4 months now. I haven't heard an invite. I think everybody's been focused on the agricultural center, so maybe as we move into the 3rd quarter of 2019, that's when that's going to start, but it's going to be all hands on deck. It's going to require a lot of attention on our front to advocate for Newberry's position, just to simply make sure we get our fair share. My last comment is that AMI, automated metering infrastructure, we have a draft RFP right here. We are working on finalizing that with, it looks like potentially an August, early September go to bid. Fabulous job by FMPA and Quanta and your team, which is nearly every employee in the city is somehow working on this RFP document, but we're expecting bidding in a month or so and deployment towards the end of the year, their spring of 2020. That concludes my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mr. Attorney? Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk? Thank you, Madam Clerk. Commissioner Coleman?
August the 3rd at Easton, the Newberry volleyball team is putting on a cornhole tournament. And I know Mike New, he's like one of those pros.
He's champion.
Huh?
I'm gonna take some money.
Yeah, well, what
It's
I
for kids
heard,
now.
this is what I heard through I was gone in Tampa with all these families and girls that I think like first prize is like $350. Yeah, I don't know if that's a lot, but it's registration's at 9, and bags start flying at 10, and it's $40 per team. So that's $20, guys. We really need everybody involved.
Mr. Mayor, I've already spent it. If you guys want to compete for second.
So it'll be fun. So I'm good at horseshoes. I'm not really that
Have
good.
you got a team already there, Commissioner Coleman?
I don't have a team. Anybody that would like to join me, I might grab Mike New. I mean, unless he's already got his team.
I tell you what, he's...
I talk a way bigger game. I talk a way bigger game than I throw. I'm just gonna have to throw that out there right now.
All right. But that's August 3rd, 9 a.m. Easton. So that's
register at the event?
at the event. You can bring your ringer, because I know that's what you always do. Golf, it doesn't matter. I know you got one. Yeah,
And Monty finds him.
he does find it.
Well, I will be there if anybody else is wanting to come and needs a partner. So I'll be happy to team up with anybody.
Right now, I think there's like 40 teams. that
40?
are- Yes.
Oh, man.
So let's go, guys. We need always, you got to remember that with the more teams, the higher the prize. I think it's right now at $350.
That's good. I got a mortgage payment. I gotta
Yeah,
make, so
exactly.
We'll
So-
clean up.
Is this single elimination?
I don't know how it works. I really don't.
He's just going to show up and start throwing bags.
Yeah, I'm going to start
He probably
throwing
won't
bags.
throw them
in
at
that
the hole.
hole.
He'll throw them at people he doesn't like.
And that's
Is that
all
it,
I got.
Commissioner Holmes? Thank you, sir. Commissioner Urson?
I'm good for the night.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Farnsworth?
I'm fine, the attorney's retired.
Yeah.
War damn
Oh, it's getting late. Commissioner Norfleet?
I kind of got three things that I was wanting to kind of bring up. The first one, I guess, would be more for city staff. On Watermelon Pond Road, we got a state park at the end of the road. Is there any way that maybe we could look at with the state of Florida with FWC on maybe road improvements for that? Grants with FWC? I know Alachua County's got a park down there, but I don't really see them maybe budgeting for anything, but the state might have a little bit more money than the county. Next is the agenda packets. I thought it was just because I was kind of new, but getting the agenda packets on a Thursday evening before the commission meeting. Is there any way we can get them maybe a week ahead of time, or maybe a preliminary agenda of what's going on? What's some of y'all's thoughts on that? Getting the agenda a little bit ahead of time instead of, the weekend before.
Hey, for me, being above 50, the sooner the better, I'm telling you. And it gets tough for me. I mean, working cows or whatever for the weekend, it's tough. So, yeah, I'm all for that. I don't know how that works out, but I would definitely be for that.
We've had this conversation numerous times, and our goal is actually to get the agenda on Wednesday before the commission meeting. And the issue is, and so why we need to think about it before we mandate it, is that if you put a hard stop and you say you cannot be on the agenda unless you tell us that unless we know about it the Friday before the week, or that Monday, that means that if I miss my application, I've got to wait for the next. So generally, and I think most of the time, why we get it pushed to Thursday instead of Wednesday is because we're working with somebody who's trying to finish up to get on that Monday's agenda so they can get done and not have to wait. It is absolutely, and I don't mean to talk for staff, it's absolutely the commission's right to say, look, guys, you get it to us by Friday so we can post it by Monday to give the commission a 7-day window to review it before it comes before us. But the downside of that is that you're putting staff in the position to say, you gave it to us on Monday, that means you're not going to be on Monday's agenda, the next meeting's agenda, you're going to have to wait for 2 weeks for the next agenda. So I've been in exactly the seat that Commissioner Norfleet is in. You know, if we get it on Thursday, you've got Thursday, usually half a day Thursday, or you don't get till Thursday night, you got one weekday the weekend, which is hard to get in touch with folks if you're trying to talk to them about it, and then Monday. So it's kind of a catch-22, but if it's something that you guys want to think about, just know that downside before you say to staff, because there's going to be somebody that says, man, I gotta get this permit, I gotta get whatever it is, and I need to be on that Monday's meeting, and it's Tuesday. You're telling me that's not enough time? And so if you make a hard and fast rule, then you kind of got to stick to it. But
Well, I don't think you need anything that's set in stone. Just like tonight, we had the county agreement at a last minute deal. But all the other stuff that was on there, that could have been, they already had most of that sitting there. So have that at an earlier date where we kind of have an idea what's going on.
why don't we do this? Why don't we ask staff to give us a presentation and say, what is the earliest date that they can give it to us? And then let's give them some feedback about how hard we want them to be on this rule. Because I think that's where it generally comes into, is staff trying to help somebody get in front of you guys. And we have emergencies like tonight where the extension is tomorrow, and we just got it from the county on Wednesday.
We didn't get it on Wednesday. We got the heads up Thursday morning that we needed to do it. We got draft number 1, maybe it closed the business Thursday night. We got draft number 2 Friday, and we got the final draft that you saw about 4 o'clock this afternoon. So that is the exception, granted. But I will tell you that rarely do we have this information compiled the week before. And it is a dead sprint from Monday morning to when it is transmitted to you to compile it. And we work for the commission, so I'm not suggesting that it can't be done, but it will shift our work priorities and our flexibility to get it any earlier, because from Monday, the week that it's due, from Monday morning when we get in until Amy hits send, it is a dead sprint to get them compiled and get them out.
Well, the last time we had this conversation, we had we gave a pretty hard rule that it was Wednesday at 5. I think was what we said, Wednesday at 5, and we've had so much going on that we've let that sort of slip into Thursday. So I mean, I think it's good to give staff a chance to respond and really let us see behind the curtain of what's going on to get that agenda ready before we make any decision. We need it on the agenda so that we can vote anyway and say we want it on Wednesday by 5, or we want it on Tuesday by 5, or we want it on Monday at 5. Does that sound like good?
Yeah, my biggest complaint though, and you're addressing that, is we get it on Thursday night at 7:30. Friday the city's closed. Monday, if we're running a business, Monday mornings are hectic, and there's not a lot of time to discuss stuff on Mondays. So just need that extra time there to maybe get with staff to see what they're looking at.
I think we definitely need to hold to that Wednesday, especially with the city being closed on Friday. So we need to try our hardest with that caveat that if something like this emergency comes up, it'll be the exception to the rule, not the, but let's put it on an agenda and hash it out, like, does
Absolutely.
that sound, it's always good to revisit this every couple of years. I get a head nod from everybody? You had 3 things, right?
Yep. And then the last one is kind of more of a departmental issue. I was just kind of wanting to see kind of what y'all's take is of maybe having a little bit more checks and balances in the city, maybe by moving the finance department and the human resource department to the city clerk's office. That way the city manager's looking over what the city clerk's doing and vice versa with the finances.
Right.
Just something to kick around.
You're saying moving finance and what other department?
Human resources,
Under,
the city clerk.
that would take a charter amendment, or a charter, we have to put that into the charter. The way the charter's written up now, it designates who everybody's under, and we don't have the power to change that. So we can, when we have the charter workshops, the charter committee hasn't even broached those kinds of issues, because the direction from this board to the charter was not to make massive structural changes to the charter. It was to clean up the language, get out the inconsistencies, those kinds of things. But at the workshop, you guys could bring that up and we could kick it around there, but ultimately that would be up to the voter. They'd have to vote. You guys would have to delineate very, very clearly to legal what you want the charter language to be. Then you guys would have to vote to put that charter language in front of the community, and then the community would have to vote on that charter itself. That would be a summary of the steps that would have to happen in order for what you're talking about to happen to go forward. Commissioner Coleman?
Is that typical in other cities where the clerk would be over finance and over HR? I think I've heard HR, but I don't know about the finance.
I've never heard of it, but I'm not an expert in how other cities structure themselves. I know that every city structures itself some way, shape, form differently. I don't know that, but one of the things that we could do at the workshop is present that kind of information. How common is that? In our situation, because Miss Judy has such a background in finance, it may be more appealing, but I don't know that having a background in finance is an industry standard when it comes to the clerk. Clerks kind of come from all walks of life.
Clerks have background in most every part of the administration of the city, and that's why we're trained in budget and finance and human resources and employment law and just a number of things, but it's so varied throughout municipalities. Whenever we there's one application, it will say your city clerk, list your role, list your duties, and it's it all depends on the charter, of course, and then that changes from time to time.
So I think the answer to that question is that would be a conversation at the first charter workshop, and I would almost say that would necessitate a standalone charter workshop, because the charter workshops that we're going to have are really pretty clear. We've offered a lot of changes to the charter, but they're all along the lines of, well, we changed this language because there was contradictory language in another part of the charter. We pulled this out because state statute already usurps our power to do that, so why put it in the charter if we're going to lose that battle anyway? Those would be sort of the marching orders that we gave to the charter committee. We would almost, I don't know that there's any mandate that we go back to the charter committee with something like that, to have the charter committee give a recommendation
You know, ultimately, it's up to you all, whatever you all want to put on the ballot. So your Charter Review Commission comes up with what they think is best for the city, and then sends that to you all, which is what they've done. And then you all deliberate on that and adopt an ordinance as to what you think should be on the ballot. You can take some of the suggested provisions your Charter Review Commission comes up with, take none of them, or all of them, and verbatim.
But
it's up to you ultimately.
I mean, certainly it's up to the commission, but the point of having a charter review committee was to make it a community conversation about what we want and get community buy-in.
That's
And
exactly.
this would be a much bigger change to the charter than anything the Charter Review Committee talked about. So wouldn't it be prudent to first call back the Charter Review Committee?
What I've
and pose
been
this
a part
question to
of,
them?
Mr. Mayor, is that I've been, specific to Newberry, I've been on probably 4, maybe 5 Charter Review Commissions over time. And going to Commissioner Norfleet's example, I've seen, when I first started with Miss Ellis, she pretty well ran the city in a lot of ways. As far as the operational manager. So your city clerk position has, in my tenure, has changed immensely over time. I bet if you asked Judy what her job duties are and what her job duties are back when she first started, she would also say that things have evolved and it's been very different over the period of time, even her tenure. Ultimately, in answer to your question, Mayor, it's up to you all to decide what it is you want to do, but I've been a part of charter commissions where the revisions are voted down, and then finally we get a new charter. And so it seems to be a very delicate thing with your citizenry. Whatever you do, you have to have the buy-in of both this commission, your Charter Review Commission, and then city staff needs to go out and as long as everybody's in support of that, the potential for a yes vote on your charter revisions is pretty good. But if you get dissension on those things, from my perspective, I've seen it been voted down repeatedly.
It would seem a little disingenuous to me to call a charter review committee, have them meet for over a year, make recommendations, and then the commission make a drastic change to the charter without consulting the charter review committee. It would, I'm not saying we shouldn't. I think if we want to pursue this, the first stop would be the Charter Review Committee, which would precipitate another meeting with the Charter Review. We would ask legal to go and get all the information that you guys have asked. How many cities do it this way? What are the pros and cons? What are the implications? Let the Charter Review Committee hash that out, make their recommendation, and then you guys are always free to say no to it. But it would kind of seem like a bait and switch to have a Charter Review Committee have very clear marching orders, let them work through that whole process, and then at the very end say, well, we without talking to you guys, want to make a really big change to the charter first. They may like the idea, and they may say, yes, I don't know, but I'd hate to cut them out of what would be a much bigger change to the charter than anything we gave them marching orders to even consider. Commissioner Herson.
How much more would that cost to add to the legal fees associated with our charter review already?
At least one more meeting. I think that would be one more budget or one more charter workshop just to think about what that looks like and what that means. And we don't pay you guys for the workshops, but for the legal research of researching it, it would mean bring the Charter Review Committee back one time, say we've had this suggestion, here's the pros and cons, the ups and downs, get their feedback. You're adding probably 2 months to that process because we would need to give staff time to do that research, get the Charter Review Committee back. We would probably have to present them the information in one meeting, let them hash it out, and then call them back again for a decision might be something that they can decide that night. But usually for really big shifts to how the city is run, you'd want some time to think about it. So that, but there would be a financial consideration for legal staff to continue on. Do we want to table the conversation tonight for everybody to ponder on and then bring back? Let's put, so on the next agenda, I think we can have this conversation, because this is, we can do some preliminary research between now and, when's our next meeting? July?
It's August the 8th.
That would give everybody a chance to sleep on it and just talk about it. So on the next agenda,
12th, sorry, August the 12th.
I had like 3 different dates. So August 12th, we'll have it on the agenda for a discussion. What was the other thing we're gonna put on that agenda? What was your other comment?
The completion of the agenda packet.
The completion of the agenda packet. That'd be, I mean, that's an easy agenda item. It'd be 2 conversations, but staff can just give us a glimpse behind the scenes so we know how long it takes and what goes into getting everything on the agenda. We can think about whether we want to reiterate Wednesday at 5. If somebody comes in at 5:30, they just have to wait till the next meeting, right? And then we can have this conversation about the charter. Does that sound good? Can fit both of those on the next agenda? We're getting used to 10 o'clock meeting, so it's fine. That concludes your comments. I think I had a comment there. I guess since that slipped out of my head, I want to thank this community. We recently hopped on a bus and went to Montgomery, Alabama, and this community was so supportive of that process and that trip. But I don't even really want to thank them for that process. What I want to thank them for is how they came together when everything fell apart. We were supposed to take one bus to Montgomery. Something happened to that bus. Another church, Jonesville Baptist Church, stepped in to let us use their bus. We got a little bit past Lake City, and that bus encountered some problems. And we had yet another church step in to make sure we got there. So this trip to Montgomery, Alabama spanned 3 cities, 3 churches, and 3 generations of folks who were tenacious. Despite all of those problems getting to Montgomery, they didn't look to come home quickly the next day. They added on to the trip, and so we ended up hitting Montgomery and Selma. And the stories and the bonding and the community building that we did in those buses, that everybody sharing stories, the history of Newberry and why they were there, was truly heartwarming and amazing. And so I want to thank Jonesville Baptist Church and CLF Church for pitching in, and I want to send a huge thanks to DCC, because they were there with us from the beginning, and they it was really Pastor Rocky. When the Jonesville Baptist Church went out, he was problem solving how we were going to continue on that trip before the bus even came to a complete stop. And he was right off, and he was on the phone. And I think we were only sitting on the side of the road for about 45 minutes before we were back and running, which, when you consider that Lake City is an hour away, is pretty good. You know. So I want to thank everybody who went and everybody who supported, sponsored, helped bring the price down for everybody. So it's truly amazing what Newberry can do when we come together and we say we're just going to do it. You know. And that concludes my comments. So we are now at public comments. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I had one more comment. That's what it was. You all got an invitation to the 4-H Alachua 4-H banquet. I believe it's on August 15th. Well, I'm inviting you now. The RSVP website is pretty intense, so if you can look at your calendars, it's August 15th at 6 o'clock at the Alachua Women's Center, right? If you can make that and give us give a little head nod, Travis will RSVP for you. I will go. I'll be in attendance. Anybody else can make August 15th, 6 o'clock, Alachua Women's Center. Check your calendar. You're in Orlando, voting. Tim's voting. That's right, Tim's voting. Anybody else? August 15th. You're in Canada. Congratulations. Break the heat. Yeah, but at least it'll be 60 degrees up there, right? You get a little escape from the...
It'll be like sitting here.
Mr. Farnsworth, you still looking? All right, well, but before tonight, as you leave, just let Travis know. He's got the website pulled up. And as they're still looking, you guys can just make eye contact there back with Travis if you can. And that will close my comment and open up the floor for public comment.
Hi, Joy Glanzer, citizen.
Welcome.
And I just wanted to acknowledge and thank this board for a couple of years ago taking on the Truth and Reconciliation Initiative. Since then, the city has had a few events, and they've been well attended, and everything has been just amazing. But this last weekend was epic and transformational. And I'll add to your comments, thank you to all the volunteers that made it happen. But when you spend 15 hours on a bus with 30 people, you get to know them and you bond. It's like going to camp. And I met people that have lived here longer than me, which is only 42 years, and that I never would have known otherwise. And we've had conversations that were intense. I can't even tell you. I mean, I think I had chills the whole time we were on this bus. But I just want to tell you, too, hang on to your seats. I hear rumors that we're going to D.C. next year. So
they were already planning trip number 2. Yeah.
This process is lifelong. And as long as the city backs us, we're going to continue to have events and continue to move forward with a new future and and to recognize our past. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Now you waited all night, Miss Linda.
The lights red, so I only have 1 second. I was Linda Woodcock, citizen. I was caught off guard with the plaque, and I wanted to really make sure I did thank you, all of you, for doing this. Our festival, as you know, is 75 years. That's pretty incredible that anything lasts 75 years, even me. But thank you for recognizing it, and I'm sorry that neither Kathy or Kim could have been here because they would have done a much better job accepting it. But thank you, sir, for your kindness.
You're the only one here that was here for the first one, right?
What did you say?
Huh?
What did he say? I was here for the first one. I don't think so.
I'll hold
James.
him if you want to get him.
I don't think so, James. All right, I got you.
And this year's budget, we're putting in a little device so I can shut off people's mics. It's coming. Other citizen comments? Hearing none, thank you guys for making it through a long night. We are